Chapter 864. The roar of a dragon reverberated through the void. An illusionary long-winged dragon appeared on the sword body. It struggled and roared furiously. Dragon aura spread all about like it wanted to fly out of the sword body. Then, the spiritual formation within the sword slowly activated. In the end, it cried out and its body collapsed, turning into threads of spiritual light that was kept back into the sword body. Success! Zhong Shou heaved a sigh of relief, persevering for a full day. This celestial sword was finally refined. It had also exhausted almost all of his energy, and he only felt that his mind was extremely tired. Just now, what he was most afraid of was giving up halfway. Days of hard work were all destroyed in a moment. The moment this Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth sword was formed, it automatically joined into the sword formation. It caused the other 36 sword artifacts to give out a buzzing sound. The sword energy increased and went out of control, stabbing into Zhong Shou's skin until it hurt. It was clear that the sword didn't have any spiritual sense, but it was a strong will that crushed in all directions. It was filled with the aura of the Tao, overbearing and barbaric. Zhong Shou had a feeling that this sword formation didn't need to be controlled at all. In fact, he didn't even need to control it to circulate and defend himself. However, at this moment, he didn't have the mood. He wanted to test the completed sword formation to see how power was doing. Pretty much right away, he used his remaining spiritual sense to control the blue fire Xian turtle to retreat. He was 10 billion miles away, far away from the white hole. Then, he observed his body closely. As expected, it is the Lu family sky burning blood, marrow burning blood spirit. Unlimited potential exploded out in his body. It caused his bloodline power to crazily grow. When Zhong Shou breathed, he spat out white flames that burned the void. That extreme pain made him hate his body's ability to take it for the first time. He wished that his will was a little weaker. It would be best if he could faint on the spot. Even if in the next moment, he would be burned to ashes by the uncontrollable bloodline power and white flames. At this moment, what shocked Zhong Shouxin the most wasn't the changes in his body, but that extremely familiar aura that had locked onto his position. It was that aura that was swiftly rushing over. It hurts. Zhong Shou forced himself to endure. A trace of blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth, but it was immediately evaporated by the power of the flames. He kept his last shred of rationality and kept thinking. You must leave this place as soon as possible. Although he intended to come here, he did not wish for Lu Wushuang to discover this world. This place was of great benefit to Xiuzhe. The existence of the black and white holes made it extremely easy for others to see through his fundamental Tao foundation. Therefore, before becoming a saint, Zhong Shou did not want this realm to be discovered by others no matter what. Moreover, he had no advantage against Lu Wushuang in this place. Only the chaotic Xuangxi could allow him to escape Lu Wushuang's pursuit. Without hesitation, Zhong Shou's figure passed through this world. When he entered the void ocean again, his body swayed. Not to mention controlling the royal demon Godlight shuttle, even maintaining his consciousness was extremely difficult. Zhong Shou instinctively wanted to summon his few protector beasts from his sleeves. This was also one of the trump cards that he hadn't used. Be it Little Gold or Hanshi, their strength was enough to go up against Celestial Realm experts. As for Xiaori, it was a killing move in his hand. Not only was it a natural protector beast, but a few months ago, it followed closely behind the blue fire Xian turtle to step into Celestial Realm. With the 4 beasts working together, even if they couldn't beat Lu Wushuang, they could block for a while and help him get through this tough time. However, when such a thought rose up in Zhong Shou's mind, he was stunned. Including the weakest lightning-winged dragon, the 4 protector beasts were all in a deep sleep. Zhong Shou's mind was already slow and at this moment, he was slightly distracted. Only a moment later did he understand the reason. The 4 beasts were all his natural protector beasts and their minds were connected to one another. Today, due to the marrow-burning blood spirit technique, he obtained numerous bloodline legacies related to the Sky Lu family, Nine-Tailed Sky Fox, Lightning Phoenix, and Water Qilin. It had a huge impact on the 4 protector beasts too. At this moment, they all fell into a deep sleep. On one hand, it was to defend, and on the other, it was to digest what they had obtained this time. This should have been a good thing. If they could get through this, their strength would have greatly increased. However, now wasn't the right time. Normal spirit masters can only ask for a divine beast level heavenly protector spirit beast. However, I, Zhongshou, am going to die here. Out of the 5 protector beasts, only the blue fire Xian turtle could be used. However, although it was quick in Shuang Ocean, it wasn't as fast as the royal demon god shuttle. That person was getting closer and closer. Is there any other way to break free? Zhongshou had a feeling that if he could get through this, he would be able to reach Celestial Realm. However, at this moment, no matter how he thought about it, he was definitely going to die. Oh right, wish power. Zhongshou's eyes lit up and a bright glow appeared in his eyes. He was a decisive person and at this moment, he was also on the verge of life and death. At this moment, he didn't think too much about it, forcing out all the wish power accumulated in his body to suppress the bloodline mutation. In just an instant, his entire body calmed down by a lot. Not only did his connection with Lu Wushuang become thinner and thinner, even his mind became a little clearer. However, he knew that this was only temporary. Sooner or later, the wish power accumulated in his body would be used up. At most, he could only use it for half a day. He needed more wish power to suppress his bloodline. He also needed to get rid of Lu Wushuang. With the current situation, he had no way to fight with this person. Speaking of which, the only chance of survival is that person who kept calling out to me. The world with 2 billion unlimited beginning and end Buddha believers. The moment he made up his mind, the blue fire Xian turtle spread out its 12 pairs of ice wings and flew in that direction. At the start, it was still okay. However, as the wish power was used up, the aura that had originally disappeared had once again chased after him. A strong spear shadow pressed over from afar, causing the blue fire Xian turtle to panic. In the end, it seemed to have caught up as a silver light shot out. 800 celestial realm breaths away, it sped through the air. Along with a loud clanging sound, the giant shield in front of the blue fire Xian turtle couldn't block anymore. It was forcefully forced to the side. The front limbs of the Xian turtle were all smashed into pieces. Zhongshou looked on expressionlessly. His eyes were calm and filled with bitterness. Was this what they meant by man proposes but God disposes? All his plans went down the drain because of this marrow-burning blood spirit. He only let down Iran, let down Kong Yao, and let down Ruoshui. Thoughts flashed in his mind as he looked on as the spear shadow flew over. However, he was unable to block it. A glimmer of hope flashed in Zhongshou's eyes. Wish power? The heavens didn't give up on me. The blue fire Xian turtle rushed over and at the last moment, it finally arrived at the periphery of that world. It also allowed Zhongshou to see a chance of survival. Chapter 865. A giant whirlpool suddenly opened up behind him, swallowing the wish power around at full speed. Zhongshou didn't bother about the silver spear that was inches away. The moment the origin power was absorbed, it was scattered all around his body. It calmed down the raging white flames and the bloodline power. He actually allowed the spear's shadow to pierce through his chest. However, just as the energy within the spear was about to explode out, Zhongshou was shocked. Zhongshou's body flashed, bringing the blue fire Xian turtle under his feet and suddenly disappearing from this place. In an instant, who knew how much distance he had crossed? He left behind a patch of blood that floated in the air. Along with the white flames being born from the blood, it turned into ashes. After Zhongshou teleported, he didn't stop at all. He went all out to use the instant space dragon pellet to change space. Only when the wish power was at its thickest did Zhong Shou's expression relax. He knew that he was only truly safe when he reached this place. As long as he entered this world, not only could he reduce the explosion of the marrow-burning blood spirit technique, but he could also hide from Lu Wushuang's spiritual sense. This was also his only chance of survival at this moment. However, due to his tight heart, he relaxed for a moment. Zhong Shou felt like he was about to faint from the pain. The sky-burning flame in his body started to burn once more. Zhong Shou was slightly shocked and didn't dare to delay anymore. He gathered up the last bit of power in his body. He continued to teleport, forcefully tearing open the barrier and entering the world not far away. When Zhong Shou's body disappeared, the void returned to silence. A few moments later, two streaks of light appeared. One in front and one behind, they sped through the air. The one at the front held a silver spear. It was Lu Wushuang. His brows were tightly furrowed as he looked around, his eyes filled with a weird expression. With a wave of his hand, some of the scattered powder flew into his hand. He placed it in front of his nose and sniffed. It's blood. Moreover, it was their Lu family's sky-burning blood. It should be because of the marrow-burning blood spirit technique. After the potential of the marrow blood exploded, it ignited itself. The figure behind him stopped, and within the light was a young man in his 20s. He smiled with a weird expression. Who knows what this young master Lu Shou faced? The hidden dangers of the marrow-burning blood spirit actually exploded out so early. If it were an ordinary member of the Lu clan, no matter how outstanding he was, it would take him at least 8 to 10 years. However, this person only used a few months. He's truly gifted. When Lu Wushuang heard this, there was no joy on his face. Instead, it was dark and sunken. He tightened his grip on the gun and turned around with killing intent. Marrow-burning blood spirit. Speaking of which, I, Lu Wushuang, have a grudge with him. Why do I need you to interfere? This secret art requires the blood of 36 members of the Lu family. Who allowed you to use such a technique to cripple my Lu clan? How audacious! They're just some outside brothers who can't be listed in the genealogy. Why should young Master Wushuang care? The young man said faintly. Even when he saw Lu Wushuang's forehead, there was no change in his expression. The Lu family has been passed down for 10,000 years, and who knows how many branch bloodlines there are. I thought that young Master Wushuang should know about the hardships of the Lu family people who were sent out. Although they have the sky-burning blood, they are unable to cultivate. To have a chance to sacrifice themselves is a good thing for them. At least they can benefit their friends and family. At the start, Miss Lu Zi's situation was only slightly better than theirs. Lu Wushuang's pupils constricted, the flames of rage in his eyes were about to explode. The teen opposite him slowly retracted his smile. I am under orders from country ruler Xuanye to serve young Master Wushuang. Naturally, I have to wholeheartedly help you plan. Today is the most crucial time for the next race leader, the battle for the sky-burning Saint Emperor. Although young Master Wushuang's combat strength is strong in the same generation and your military achievements are second. However, in terms of bloodline, you are only fifth. Although there is hope, there are many variables. How can I waste too much time for this Zhong Shou? How would this matter have nothing to do with me? If I can solve it early, I will stop at nothing. He paused and then the teen said leisurely, or is young Master Wushuang confident that you can find traces of this person without using blood spirit power? Lu Wushuang held his breath. Zhong Shou's void teleportation technique was indeed weird and magical. If not for the marrow-burning blood spirit technique, dozens of days ago, he would have been left behind by this Zhong Shou. If he wanted to blame him, he was in no position to do so. He scoffed and continued to spread out his spiritual sense to search around. He still couldn't find where Zhong Shou was. His connection with his cousin seemed to have suddenly been cut off and there were no traces of him. Thinking about it for a moment, Lu Wushuang's eyes slowly locked onto a world not far away. Joy appeared in his eyes. Songling world. Although he didn't sense anything, Lu Wushuang could use the changes in the space power nearby as well as the traces left by Zhong Shou to deduce where this person went. It seems like this person has some kind of secret technique to cut off his bloodline connection with young master. However, it seems like he is really exhausted. He doesn't even have the ability to cover his tracks. They all say that if the marrow-burning blood spirit technique doesn't have the corresponding restrictions to work with it, once it explodes, it will be extremely painful. If that is the case, for this person to be able to hold on till now, his spiritual sense and intent must be really strong. This person is terrifying. If there is no need, we can't be enemies with him. However, since young master has this chance, we should kill him. As the teen said that, the smile on his face became more and more weird. Songling world, I really don't know if this Zhong Shou is really fated with our Lu family or if he is just unlucky. This place was recently opened up by our Lu family and was occupied by the Buddhist faction. After they were chased out, there were still many of them left. The few world protector Luohan have all fallen and power isn't here anymore. However, a few years ago, for some reason, the infinite beginning and end Buddha was born. He was about to descend upon this world and save the people of Songling world from the fire and water. Thus, there are many unlimited beginning and end Buddha statues all around Songling world. No less than 10 million, it is endless. Unlimited beginning and end? Lu Wushuang's brow rose up. Naturally, he had heard of this name. The future Buddha of the Buddhist faction, it was said that when Dari Rulai was born, he specially changed his scriptures. There was boundless light, boundless darkness, and boundless power. He was also the hope of the entire Buddhist faction to open up the Pure Land. However, it was said that the whereabouts of this so-called future Buddha had yet to be confirmed. The people of Songling world respected this Buddha and hoped that he would descend. This also meant that the people of this world still didn't want to be tamed by their Lu family. Shaking his head, Lu Wushuang scoffed coldly. This Zhong Shou had to die in his hands. Even if the Buddhist ancestor descended in this world, he didn't care. Moreover, it was an unlimited beginning and end that he didn't even know existed. He clenched his fists and green veins popped out. Lu Wushuang took a step forward and stepped into the space barrier. What he saw was an ocean surface not far from the beach. As killing intent spread out, it caused the seagulls nearby to fly up. Lu Wushuang's face was cold as he looked into the sky. It was night time and he could see a meteor falling from the sky. Lu Wushuang's eyes squinted, his eyes were filled with coldness. Who knows if this falling star was a sign of Zhong Shou's death? At this moment, outside of Songling world, the 20-year-old teen had a deep smile on his face. Zhong Shou? Interesting, this is really interesting. Everyone in the Lu family thought that he was a dual meridian body and trash. Who knew that he actually had such ability, reaching the peak of the spirit realm in a short 6 to 7 years. Such aptitude was truly inconceivable. Although he is lazy and doesn't want to use his ability to rule a country, he is able to let go and use people. The future sky-burning Saint Emperor of our Lu family, this person is probably more suitable than young Master Wushuang and the others. No wonder Fengjue took such a risk. What a waste. Shaking his head, the teen sighed. Although that young madam was not bad due to her birth, she received very little support from the Lu family. Based on what he knew, at least within the Lu family, country ruler Xianhua and country ruler Xuanye would go all out to stop her. And this time, the chances of that person escaping from Lu Wushuang's spear was really low. Pretty much at the same time, within common people's world, a girl rode on the back of a purple fire cavalry beast, standing tall in the middle of the army. She was tall and dressed in silver armor, looking really valiant. Although she was a girl, she didn't look out of place in this million-strong army. The surrounding soldiers would occasionally look over, their gazes filled with respect. At this moment, her brows were furrowed as she looked up into the sky. Just now, without any warning, she felt her heart skip a beat. A strong sense of uneasiness filled her heart. "It's my husband." In just an instant, Kong Yao knew where the uneasiness came from. Even though she herself had already destroyed the spirit eyes of the heavenly eye, she was still unable to do anything. There were still many remnants of the Kong family's spiritual sense that they were born with. Gritting her teeth, Kong Yao took out the divination stick that she carried with her. She caused it to float in front of her body, causing the void to change. A moment later, her expression relaxed and she was deep in thought. "Is Taiji coming?" Her face was really weird. Her husband most probably had too many good things recently, which was why he faced such a calamity. The key was that the divination behind wasn't a dragon trapped in shallow waters, but a dragon returning to the ocean. Speaking of which, it was scary but not dangerous? Kong Yao's lips curled up and she broke into a laugh. She felt a little pitiful for her husband's opponent this time. Placing down the worry in her heart, Kong Yao's eyes turned and looked into the distance. At this moment, beside a cloud ocean, numerous troops were gathered here. Both sides were solemnly facing each other. The entire battlefront spread out for tens of miles. This was the shore of South Wind Continent, opposite was the Yu Country army. On the other side of the cloud bank was a crimson ocean. Deqian country close to 2 million troops were gathered here. This battle was a country wiping out war. Coincidentally, at this moment, a horse galloped over. "General Zhong Yuan, please give your orders, the enemy is afraid. Do you want to attack and destroy the enemy?" Chapter 866. General Zhong Yuan, please give your orders, the enemy is afraid. Do you want to attack? Kong Yao came back to his senses and looked towards the left wing. Instantly, he could see a force of 30,000 elite cavalry dressed in red armor. They were charging and harassing the left wing of the Vietnamese army formation. They were split into dozens of groups, advancing and retreating as they wished. They split up and regrouped, sometimes speeding up, sometimes slowing down. The arcs were dazzling to the eye. It was pretty much like the most exquisite art, extremely beautiful and eye-catching. This was the newly built Red Dipper Iron Cavalry of Deqian. They were passed down from the Qin dynasty and were the most basic soldier type. Grade 4 Dao soldiers were above average in terms of combat strength, but they were cheap and there were many of them. When Great Qin was at its peak, it could drown the entire cloud world. In this era, they could be considered an elite cavalry army. Till date, Great Gan had only built 30,000 of them. They were built after Chiu Wei took charge of the privy court and were his blood, sweat, and tears. Deqian didn't have enough Xiantian experts. However, those who were chosen had a chance to break through to Xiantian within a few years. At this moment, there were only 30,000 of them, but they gave off the aura of a huge army. It caused the Vietnamese army to be unable to deal with them. The originally orderly army was slowly becoming chaotic. The soldiers were terrified and their faces were ashen white. Just as Zhong Yuan had said, the time was right. They just needed one strike to crush the enemy left wing. As expected from an unparalleled general, cavalry charging and invincible. In just 6 hours, they haven't even fought and the blood cavalry hasn't even been used and the Vietnamese army is showing signs of losing. If we win this battle, Commander Zhong will take the credit. At this moment, Healy was praising from the side. This battle was the mission of the Pill Crane Race Army. It was a light cavalry attack to disturb Great Yu and waste their strength. In the past month, Healy had led his race to run around South Wind Cloud Continent. Only now did he have time. As for the main force battle, the Crane Race Light Cavalry was of little use. Frontal assaults weren't what they were good at. This was why Healy was able to look on from the side of the commander. In my eyes, General, he should be the one who contributed the most. When he said the word, this consort, Kong Yao couldn't help but blush slightly. Until now, she was still not used to this title. Every time she talked about it, she would think of how ridiculous Zhong's show was before he left. However, he had no choice but to do so, especially in the army, where rules were the most disorderly. At this moment, Kong Yao was not the inspector of the left corps, but the princess consort. He commanded and controlled all the Deqian armies. When Zhong Shou left, he temporarily took charge of the situation for him. Xianyuan Iran was addicted to pill refining and was also proving her Tao through seeking pills. Even if there were occasionally directors, they were mostly involved in government affairs. Just like Zhong Shou, he would not casually interfere in things that he was not good at. Deqian seemed to be safe at the moment, but she couldn't help but replace Zhong Shou to take control of Deqian's war affairs. Zhong Shou gave her power, allowing her to freely move the troops to conquer all around. This was also her life's dream. If not for General He and the Sky Fox race disturbing their land, causing the Yu dynasty to panic. Our Deqian has an army, but we might not have been able to so smoothly ascend the Cloud Continent. Healy smiled and didn't argue, but he also didn't show any self-satisfaction. In fact, without their month of tough battles, the Yu army had no choice but to retreat to the back. Deqian definitely wouldn't have been able to attack the shore so easily. However, without the thousands of warships, 2 million troops cruising outside of the Cloud Ocean, locking down 90% of the Yu army forces, how would they be able to be so free within Yu country? This wasn't the work of the Pill Crane race, but the Sky Fox race too. The Crane race was good at flying while the Fox race was good at illusionary technique. The two of them complemented one another. From what I can see, there are many Taoist people on the other side. As expected, they want to interfere in this battle. These people are unable to change the situation, but they can assassinate the commander. Princess, please be careful. Just a bunch of clowns. Kong Yao looked across, dozens of miles away, at the tightly packed crowd. She could also see the Yu country ruler Yuan whiling on the carriage. His eyes were red, his expression furious and vicious. A few months ago, he had predicted his fate. His face was sickly ashen white. She had heard that since this person was defeated in Huizhou, he had been addicted to wine and women, pretty much not bothering about court matters and doing many preposterous things. Speaking of which, one couldn't blame him. That time in Huizhou, Zhang Huai had dealt a heavy blow to him. Close to 80% of his elite troops had been lost. The 1,000 warships of the Yu dynasty had half sunk into the Cloud Ocean. During this year, the Deqian navy had locked them down, and trade was pretty much cut off. The internal powers were stirred up by the Deqian and were in chaos. The battle today was just a final struggle. How could he not know that he was in a predicament that could not be solved? Although the Taoist faction was interfering, before they had absolute confidence, they wouldn't interfere too deeply. The more ambitious a person was, the crazier they would be when faced with a dead end. It wasn't surprising that they would do anything. However, speaking of perverted, Kong Yao instinctively thought back to that night. She couldn't help but scoff. He most probably couldn't compare to that fellow. Shaking her head, Kong Yao came back to her senses. She straightened her back, her expression was really solemn. Order the troops to strike out. Tell Commander Zhong that the left wing just needs to crush the enemy. We need to leave some strength to prepare for war. With that order, the Red Ocean instantly gave out the sound of armor plates vibrating. Amidst the explosion, it slowly surged forward. The aura was vast, like a steel wall pressing down on the enemy. Healy, who was at the side, was speechless. They only needed to defeat the enemy? Stop in time? Even at this moment, even though victory was in their hands, they still didn't forget to be careful. However, there was indeed no need to take the risk. Who knew whether or not the enemy would have any methods to fight to the death? As long as the army crushed the enemy in front of them, advancing step by step, they would be able to crush the already unstable Great Yu. Those who were truly good at war didn't have any achievements. To be good at using strength, they just needed to create a country-destroying situation. Those powers within your country would naturally jump out one by one. Those cities would also change sides one by one. The elite cavalry would maintain combat strength at all times to prevent accidents from happening. The outcome of this battle wasn't something that could be changed by external forces. Today was the day that Great You would be destroyed. Before his last bit of consciousness was wiped out, he sped into this foreign world that was calling out to him. Zhong Shou kept the blue fire Xian turtle and tried his best to travel in the air. His mind couldn't think at all. He could only rely on his body to fly towards the place that he felt was the safest in this world. A moment later, there was a heavy thud. He felt like he had fallen into a small lake. Then, his eyes turned black and he fell unconscious. Who knows how long had passed before Zhong Shou woke up from his deep sleep. Right away, he spread out his spiritual sense to sense the surroundings. First, he heaved a sigh of relief. He was still alive. It seemed like he didn't fall into Lu Wushuang's hands. Before he fainted, the wish power that he tried his best to absorb had some use. It was so close, but Lu Wushuang still hadn't found it. Then, he observed the surrounding environment. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed slightly. What thick wish power! It seems to be a Buddhist temple. However, it is really secluded. He remembered that before he fainted, he seemed to have fallen into a lake. Why did he come here? Moreover, this Buddhist temple was really secluded, built in a large primitive forest, like they were afraid of people noticing it. Suddenly, there was a creaking sound outside the door. It was the wooden door being pushed open. Zhong Shou forced his eyes open and looked outside. He was startled and actually felt a little shy. Only now did he realize that he was naked. However, it couldn't be compared to the shock that the woman who walked in gave him. Jingyin, she was the one that he saw with his spiritual sense that day. She was extremely similar to Jingyin, like she was born from the same womb. How was it so coincidental? Following this, Zhong Shou comprehended something and knew that this wasn't a coincidence, but before he fainted, he instinctively flew towards the spiritual sense that he left in this world. This place was also the place where wish power was the thickest in this world. When this Jingyin entered and saw that he had woken up, she was delighted. Then, she felt shy. However, in the blink of an eye, she returned back to normal. She was really calm. Even when she looked at Zhong Shou's body, it was like she was looking at something really normal. "You are awake?" Carrying a water basin, Jingyin walked to his side. Then, she used a wet towel to wipe Zhong Shou's body. "Roughly 3 days ago, when Master and I passed by Xiaolin Lake, we noticed that you were unconscious in the lake. Thus, we asked Master to bring you back to save you. I wonder if you're feeling better now, benefactor?" Before this, Jingyin was really worried. Master said that she couldn't see through your illness. The temperature in your body is 100 times that of normal people. She was helpless. She could only wait for you to wake up, or you might never wake up. Zhong Shoxin felt really weird. So this girl was also called Jingyin? How was there such a coincidence in the world? Not only did they look the same, but even their names were the same. The feeling that they gave one was similar. They were both fresh and pure. It wasn't that she came to this world today, and it was indeed a sudden situation, but her expression didn't change. He nearly thought that this was a trap specially set up for him. However, what was going on? Zhong Shou's body was already a celestial body. He couldn't truly make his body flawless, but it was already pure and translucent, like a crystal. Originally, there shouldn't be any impurities in his body, but for some reason, at this moment, his body was covered in sweat. His entire body was covered in a layer of black sweat, and the smell was slightly pungent. Jingyin didn't care at all, carefully cleaning his body. Only when she reached his lower body did she feel slightly awkward for a moment. She carelessly wiped a few times, but it didn't affect that thing. With just a few touches, it stood up like it was a pillar that supported the heavens, looking really majestic. Jingyin was even more embarrassed. The calmness from before was all gone. She didn't dare to use her eyes to look, turning her gaze elsewhere. Chapter 867. Zhong Shou also felt really awkward. He knew that the sweat on his body was the evolution of the bloodline power in his body. The sky-burning flame and the other bloodlines forced out the remaining impurities in his body. Only because his body was close to the celestial body, which was why it was a light black color. It was a good thing that the sweat wasn't burned by the flame power. It also signaled that the sky-burning bloodline had finally calmed down. At this moment, the heart-piercing pain was still there. However, compared to before, it wasn't as bad. However, as for what it was exactly, he needed to look into his body and meditate to know. At this moment, Zhong Shou was only trying his best to calm down the thing below. In the past, with just a thought, his internal energy could slightly calm it down. However, for some reason, it was totally useless today. The more he thought about it, the more that thing wouldn't fall. When Jingyin's hand touched it, its blood vessels expanded and green veins popped out. It caused Jingyin's eyes to have no place to look. She hurriedly wiped it a few times before moving it to another place. She said, "Your body is special. Even Master said that you are the weirdest person she has seen in her life. Your body is as hot as a furnace, but you are still alive. That day in the lake, there were tens of thousands of fish beasts around your body, fighting and killing. Shizhuan said that you, benefactor, should be a very capable person. You seem to have been injured by those fire demons, which was why you fainted." Zhong Shou listened on quietly. Then, large beads of cold sweat flowed down his forehead. At that time, he forgot that his celestial body was a huge, nourishing medicine to those beasts. Even if they could only swallow a bit of his flesh and blood, it would greatly increase their strength. Below celestial realm, normal beasts naturally couldn't hurt him. However, as time went on, Lu Wushuang would find out sooner or later. In 3 days, anything could happen. Fortunately, this pair of master and disciple passed by and rescued him in time. If not, he would have turned to dust in Lu Wushuang's hands. Mocking himself, Zhong Shou gathered his spiritual sense once more and reached into his chakra meridians and limbs. In just a moment, he was deep in thought. The wound on his chest had completely healed. At this moment, the changes in his body didn't stop as he had expected. Instead, it was increasing in strength, extracting large amounts of his life-true energy at every moment. As for the other 3 bloodlines, they were in no way inferior. The bloodline imprint of the water Qilin had already been imprinted into the depths of his body. As for the 9-tailed black fox and lightning luan, they were also unrestrainedly stretching. Sky-burning blood, as expected from an aristocratic family with 3 end-realm experts in 50,000 years. As for the other 3 bloodlines, only the water Qilin could contend against it. The 9-tailed sky fox and the lightning luan were still slightly inferior. Although they were divine beasts, there were very few experts within the 2 clans. The sky-burning Lu family had 3 end realms in 50,000 years, and who knows how many Saint Realm experts they had. He had already strengthened his bloodline to its limit. As long as one was a member of the Lu family, without the guidance of a teacher, one could cultivate to the saint level just by relying on the martial arts and memories passed down through the bloodline. At this moment, the internal energy and soul power in his body automatically spread around his body. Along with the remaining wish power, it suppressed the various changes in his body. Zhong Shou looked closely and his brow furrowed. He couldn't leave this power for even a moment. Instead, he needed to strengthen it. It was both suppressing and guiding it. It caused his body to change so that he wouldn't change in an unknown direction. As for his body, it was constantly being regenerated and reconstructed. However, it was also being destroyed by the tyrannical power. In other words, he had no strength to fight a chicken? No, he was purely relying on his own strength, and he couldn't move at all. The only thing that could be used was the dense power of belief in this world. Roughly speaking, if he went all out, he would be able to use God realm strength in this world. However, he needed to use his black and white Dharma to be able to use it. Although the heaven-devouring energy conversion technique could devour and purify it, it was absolutely unable to gather and unify all the power of belief that was scattered throughout this world. If he used the Dharma, the unlimited beginning and end Buddha, the good news was that he didn't need to worry about his own safety in this world. Even Lu Wushuang wouldn't be able to beat him. If he messed with him, a black hole Dharma would be able to smash that person into dust. However, if he used the black and white Dharma, there was a chance that the Buddhist faction would notice. If he really wanted to use this power, he would only use it when he had no choice. Zhong Shou smiled with an ugly expression. When he came back to his senses. When he got back to his senses, he saw that Jingyin had already placed the wet towel back into the basin. Her face flushed red, but she couldn't help but sneak a peek at his lower body. She was really curious. Zhong Shou was speechless. Where was this brat looking at? However, she felt a little proud, which made his lower body look even more vicious. He coughed dryly. Zhong Shou continued to spread his spiritual sense outwards to search while asking curiously, "What world is this? Where is this place? Why is this Buddhist temple in such a faraway place? What world is this?" Jingyin was startled, and then she smiled sweetly. "Benefactor, you are indeed not from this world. Master also said that you should be a celestial from the outer region, so why did you end up here? As for this world, it originally didn't have a name. Only when the Buddhas descended did this world have the name Leping World. I hope that the people of this world can be happy, safe, and prosperous. However, 300 years ago, a devil fire evil demon descended upon this world and abandoned the name of Leping World, changing it to Tsongling World." Demon fire evil demon? Tsongling World? Zhong Shou's expression turned serious. He had only heard of this name dozens of days ago. Originally, he didn't care, but looking at his situation, he had to continue to stay in this Tsongling World for a period of time. He had to investigate the situation in this world. The Lu family was huge, along with thousands of worlds under them. There were numerous powers and races. Who knows, there might be a time when he would have a conflict with these so-called demon fire evil demons. Are they from the outer region? Where did they come from? I heard that they are from the sky-burning Lu family. They have 800 medium-sized worlds. 300 years ago, close to 1 million troops descended in this world. They were all good at controlling flames, killing gods and Buddhas everywhere. She paused and looked towards Zhong Shou with a weird expression. Just now when she mentioned the sky-burning Lu family, she could sense that Zhong Shou's body shook like he was shocked. This world has been under the rule of the sky-burning Lu family for 100 years. Oh right, I remember Master said that your injuries were caused by the evil demon flames? The last sentence was filled with probing intent. When Zhong Shou heard this, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. What was this? In his panic, he tried his best to escape from Lu Wushuang's spear, but he ended up in the enemy's lair. Chapter 868. Beside a secret forest, Zhong Shou was casually using his hand to point to the left and right. He acted willfully, but as long as he touched it with his fingertips, everything would disappear in an instant or suddenly explode. As expected, this wish power can be used. Zhong Shou only knew a little about gods. However, he had fought dozens of battles with those Taoist faction protector gods in the cloud world. He had a deep understanding of how they used their god power. At this moment, he gathered the wish power of the Tsongling world to use this black and white Dharma ability. Although he couldn't use it as he wished, there weren't any obstacles. However, it is still a layer away. After all, the so-called wish power comes from the heart of others. I don't have the Buddhist faction relics, so when I use them, I can't compare to those true gods and Buddhas. It didn't involve power, but it consumed a lot of wish power. Using the same ability, his wish power consumption exceeded that of the gods and Buddhas by 70%. However, he could at least keep his life. To be able to use the so-called unlimited beginning and end Buddha power, then as long as there were 300 million Buddhist faction believers in this world and no Saint Realm experts attacked, Zhong Shou would be fine. Then, Zhong Shou would be perfectly fine. At this moment, 7 days had passed since he woke up. His body was still paralyzed and he was unable to move. He could only sit on the wooden wheelchair. The reason why he could move his fingers was because he used wish power. Unfortunately, he wasn't familiar with it. It was okay if he used his soul to control it, but once he used it within his body, there were all sorts of situations. The actions of his hands were also extremely stiff at this moment. His limbs and bones were still like they were being sliced by knife. Even with the thick wish power here, it was unable to totally suppress this marrow-burning blood spirit technique. It was still mutating and advancing, sucking out his true essence. However, the process was slow and it wasn't as intense as when it exploded out at the start. At this moment, Zhong Shou was feeling both pain and joy. Along with a thought rising up, a white flame rose up in his palm. Along with a few different colored streaks of lightning being injected in, the flame instantly turned black. The strength of this lightning blaze thousand flash is 10 times stronger than before. All of Zhong Shou's power was scattered in all directions, suppressing it within his body. However, only the power of the bloodline could be used. Although the marrow-burning blood spirit art was a calamity, once it was completed, it would become a calamity. However, it would cause his physique to grow explosively and his abilities to increase greatly. However, the most important thing was the memories that came from the bloodline imprint as his bloodline was developed. There were divine abilities, as well as descriptions of the 4 great daos of water, fire, lightning, and illusion. This marrow-burning technique, pretty much each time it acted up on a large scale, Zhong Shou's attainments in spiritual cultivation would improve. The 4 true spiritual talismans in his body were close to the perfect level. Along with it, the other related talismans and star Dao seeds would also be greatly improved. This time, I will lose at least 200 years of my lifespan. However, he had to thank the person who used the marrow-burning blood spirit technique. I really don't know how to repay this favor. The memories of divine abilities hidden in the bloodline were different from the scriptures and records in the world. The latter placed the concept of the great Tao in word. As for the former, it was passed down through thoughts. There were many techniques in the world, many key points of cultivation that could only be understood and couldn't be passed down through word. Even if it was written down in the ancient era, one needed to comprehend it themselves. Bloodline memories were different and could be directly grasped. After the matter, one just needed to organize it and deepen their memories. What these 200 years of lifespan exchanged for was that Zhong Shou needed at least 1,000 years to comprehend it. This was undoubtedly a shortcut. In comparison, the price he paid wasn't worth mentioning at all. Apart from suppressing the changes in his bloodline, Zhong Shou was also using the wish power here to train his body. Unfortunately, he couldn't use the iron sand secret technique, and the process was much slower. I just need 10 more days to go through the tribulation. If it wasn't for the foundations of my body, I could even do it now. However, it isn't easy to hide from Lu Wushuang. With the Book of Ian, each day was a full 10 days. If he didn't care about the consumption, he could even speed up half a year in a day. His current foundations were getting thicker and thicker with each passing day. It was improving at an unimaginable speed. Looking at the black and white holes, marrow-burning blood spirit, they all benefited him greatly. At this moment, after all the hard work, it was time for him to reap the fruits of his labor. The only problem was how to safely go through the tribulation. As long as he stepped into celestial realm, he would be able to suppress this marrow-burning blood spirit technique. At that time, he wouldn't fear Lu Wushuang and would have the ability to fight him. Forget it. As they say, when the water flows, the boat will naturally cross the bridge. If I really can't avoid it, then when I go through the tribulation, I will have a good battle with him. In the past, in the cloud world, such situations didn't happen before. Spirit realm cultivators, no matter which world they were in, were recognized as celestials. However, they were false celestials. Only by forming a golden pellet or forming a true image and dharma could one be considered a true celestial realm cultivator. Thinking about this, Zhong Shou tossed aside all the random thoughts. He used his wish power ability to push the wooden wheel forward. Then, he looked below with interest. That day after talking to Jingyin, he found out that this wasn't a temple but a nunnery. The reason why it was built deep in the mountains and forests was to avoid being forced by those demon fire evil demons. That day after he woke up, Zhong Shou was shifted to this lone cliff in the back mountain. Based on what Jingyin said, the nunnery was filled with women. He was a guy living inside. Even if he was paralyzed, it was still inconvenient. This was what he wanted. Not coming into contact with people would reduce the chances of Lu Wushuang noticing him. It was night time, and where he looked, smoke rose up. Most of the women in the temple were working outside. At this moment, they all returned. Their faces were filled with exhaustion. Apart from that, there were many Buddhist faction believers who came from thousands of miles away. However, the people in the nunnery didn't dare to receive them. The doors were tightly shut. Based on what he observed, this nunnery known as Shuiyue Nunnery didn't accept the offerings of believers. The 3,000 nuns in the nunnery were all self-reliant. Amongst them, there were many who had great strength. Naturally, there was no one above spirit realm. As for the believers, they didn't force the issue. They just stood outside the monastery and worshipped silently. Often, they would leave after half a day. Looking at such a scene, Zhong Shou was really relaxed. This wasn't the first time he saw this. Since he woke up, it had been the same situation for several days. He didn't care much about it and wasn't curious at all. He was only in this world to avoid the tribulation. It was best if he didn't have as much cause and effect as possible. As long as he repaid Jingyin and her master before he left, he would have nothing to worry about in this Zongling world. "You came here again," Jingyin's voice, which was like a clear spring in an empty valley, sounded once more. Chapter 869. Along with the voice, Jingyin walked to his side. Her clear black and white eyes were filled with resentment and reproach. Zhong Shou was helpless as he turned around. As expected, this brat was holding an exquisite lunchbox. Without needing to guess, he knew that it was food and medicine. The medicine was okay, but that Shuiyue nunnery head was really skilled in the medicine path. She might even be above Xianyuan Iran. She helped him break his meridians several times, although it couldn't solve the pain of burning marrow. However, she made a medicine that could reduce the pain and suppress the burning marrow. To him, although it wasn't of much use, it was better than nothing. As for food, Zhong Shou was now in the spirit realm and had long passed the Anidia realm. His body was like a small heaven and earth, self-sufficient. Not to mention a day or two, even if he didn't eat or drink for 100 years, it wouldn't matter. This brat didn't believe him, saying that her master was also at the peak of the heaven realm and was at the Anidia realm, but he needed to eat 3 cows' worth of food for a meal. People who were seriously ill needed food to replenish their bodies. This was why each day, he still had to eat 3 meals a day, and she would send the medicine and food over. Zhong Shou was speechless and could only let her do as she wished. This brat had just started to cultivate and still looked at the world from the perspective of a normal person. She also didn't have the concept of spirit realm and celestials. In her eyes, her master was the strongest. How could Zhong Shou be the same as a normal cultivator? Even her master, that Xiaoye, ate 3 cows every meal for cultivation. When one used the martial path to train the body, the consumption was huge. Zhong Shou had the same experience in the past. At that time, he was really hungry and wanted to swallow everything. He tried to persuade her, but she didn't listen, so Zhong Shou didn't explain anymore. It wasn't that he was lazy and didn't care, but that he was happy to see her succeed and was secretly delighted. Zhong Shou took the food box and opened it, swallowing the medicine in one gulp. The medicine seemed to have been improved by a lot. The moment he swallowed it, he felt an icy cold feeling rise up in his chest. The sky-burning words that were attacking his apertures were also suppressed. Zhong Shou squinted his eyes. As expected, Monk Xiaoya also knew that he had the blood of the Lu family in his body. If it wasn't for the fact that they already knew the true cause of his illness, it would be extremely difficult to concoct such an appropriate medicine. Zhong Shou couldn't help but laugh when he thought of the graceful middle-aged female monk he saw half a day ago, and then he thought of this woman, the Taotai who swallowed 3 cows in a day. Originally, when training the body, Kong Yao and Ruoshui couldn't be refined. However, there was the demon-warding pill that Xianyuan Iran made. Just 1 pill was equivalent to the work of an ox, and the effect was even better. It's a pity. Although this person is skilled in the Tao of medicine and has great medicinal knowledge, he doesn't know the art of alchemy. Otherwise, he would most likely become an alchemy grandmaster. Putting down the medicine bowl, Zhong Shou's eyes looked towards the few dishes. There were only a few vegetarian dishes, and they looked ordinary. However, surprisingly, they aroused one's appetite. Zhong Shou picked up a piece of tofu and placed it in his mouth to taste. Then, a satisfied and enjoyable expression appeared in his eyes. He loved good food and even specially studied it. However, at this moment, he had to admit that this girl's culinary skills were far better than his. Moreover, there were other mysteries to it. Each plate of vegetarian dishes made Zhong Shou feel the meaning of the Tao. This was also the reason why Zhong Shou gave up on trying to stop her, and instead silently agreed to it. To him, the food cooked by this woman was simply the best enjoyment. Jingyin's gaze was weird as she looked on quietly from the side, a glow flashing in her eyes. She wanted to speak but stopped, hesitating for a moment before finally opening her mouth to ask, "Benefactor, is it really so delicious? However, my senior and junior sisters all said that my dishes are a little weird." "How is it weird? But I can't say." Zhong Shou couldn't help but laugh when he heard that, thinking that naturally these dishes were weird. It was supposed to be steaming hot, soft and smooth tofu. However, when one ate it, it felt really cold and really tough. How could it not be weird? He didn't know how Jingyin did it. He had actually fused some of the laws of ice and toughness into the food. It had a unique taste and was extremely unique. If it was other people, even if they felt that the taste was really good, just the texture would make them retreat. If one's cultivation didn't reach a certain realm, how would one be able to comprehend the mysteries? Iran used pills to prove the Tao while this girl used food to cultivate the Tao. She was really special. Zhong Shou had eaten all kinds of delicacies, but he had never come into contact with such a delicacy. It really made one captivated. He found it weird before, but thinking about how this girl's words had the power to stir up cause and effect and fate, he didn't find it weird anymore. "It is delicious." Those few simple words made the girl beside him so happy that she was about to jump up. Zhong Shou was deep in thought as he looked at Jingyin's bright and clean head. The Jingyin of the cloud world had already returned to the secular world when she came to his side. He only saw the nun version of Jingyin in this world. She was really cute. "You are just 16, in the prime of your life, why did you shave your head? As a nun, you have to follow the rules and can't date." "What is so good about that? Why do you say that?" Jingyin frowned and felt that Zhong Shou's words were a little old-fashioned. However, looking at his age, he was just similar to her. Although our Buddhist faction rules prohibit marriage, we never stop men and women from dating. However, I am prepared to become a nun here, to use my pure body to accompany the unlimited beginning and end Buddha and serve him for the rest of my life. Only then did Zhong Shou know that the Buddhist faction rules in Songling world were different from the Cloud world. The cultivators of the Cloud world all wanted to break away from the secular world and become monks. The Taoist faction was still okay, but the Buddhist faction had to follow all sorts of rules. However, this world didn't seem to have such rules. That's right, the Buddhist faction rules in the Cloud world were influenced by the Confucian faction. In the early years, the Buddhist faction was indeed seen as a perverted and evil sect. If one looked closely at the scriptures, one would know that this sect didn't mind the matters between men and women. Instead, they respected it a lot. If not, there wouldn't be such a Buddhist venerable. When he heard the latter half, he felt speechless. Why did he feel like he had sinned so much? To let such a cute girl use her entire life to serve him was something that the heavens wouldn't allow. Unlimited beginning and end Buddha? The future Buddha of the Buddhist faction? Zhong Shou broke into a laugh. I heard about it in the outer region. However, the Buddhist faction didn't even confirm who this person was. He might not be able to become the future Buddha. Who knows, he might have already died. Why waste your entire life for this ethereal future Buddha? Right as he said that, he stopped. Jingyin's expression was really ugly, her eyes were filled with rage. He seemed to want to reprimand him, but he held himself back. Jingyin's expression was unusually cold. I will act like I didn't hear what benefactor said. The future unlimited Buddha is the decree of the various Buddhas and definitely won't be wrong. How can I allow you to blaspheme him? Her voice was filled with coldness. Even if it is as benefactor said, I have no regrets and am willing to do this. Chapter 870. Even if it is as you say, I have no regrets and am willing to do this. Not only was her voice cold, but it was also filled with decisiveness. Zhong Shou expected this and shook his head. However, have you thought about how even if there is an unlimited beginning and end, he might not be willing to respond to your wishes? You've devoted your whole life, and all you got in return is nothing? Even the words of those few Buddhist ancestors might not come true? The so-called boundless future Buddha was none other than him. Naturally, he was really clear about his own thoughts. He couldn't bear to say these words, and also because of that prophecy. The one who started it needed to untie it. It would be a little problematic for him to break the cause and effect and fate powers involved. However, if this woman changed her words and removed the word spirit, it would be much easier. Jingyin was stunned and looked at Zhong Shou in shock. Like she was finding it weird that Zhong Shou said that he would respond to her wishes. Then, she smiled. You really know how to read people's hearts. Jingyin's motives for serving the unlimited Buddha aren't pure. More than half of Jingyin's family had died in the hands of those devil fire fiends. The remaining ones are doing hard labor in the desolate lands. If I want my family to leave this place, I can only place my hopes on the future Buddha. Only when the unlimited Buddha descends can the people of my Lepying world escape from this calamity. She said leisurely. Moreover, with our situation, what can we do if we don't believe in this Buddhist scripture? It is said that the sky-burning Lu family controls 800 worlds in the outer region and numerous armies. When my Lepying world was at its peak, it was said that we had 200 guardian deities. At that time, we were helpless, much less now? Zhong Shou was instantly speechless. The so-called guardian deities were the spirit realm cultivators of the Buddhist faction. Guardian deities, Luohan, Bodhisattva, Venerable Buddha, these four Buddhist faction realms corresponded to Spirit Realm, Celestial Realm, God Realm, and Saint Realm. Above them were the Buddhist ancestors. Till date, it was said that there were only the primordial Buddha, past and present Buddhas. Speaking of which, it did make one feel helpless. Although there were 3 end realms in charge, the Buddhist faction was too weak. However, the Buddhist sects started too late and were suppressed by many other powers. Even if they occupied this Songling world, they wouldn't be able to keep it. They would be chased out by the Lu family. Just as Jingyin had said, the immeasurable beginning and end Buddha was their only hope and hope. If he gave up, then there would be nothing left. At this moment, Songling world indeed didn't have the strength to go up against the sky-burning Lu family. With a slight sigh, Zhong Shou shook his head and stopped trying to persuade him. He could only think of a solution after he left. At that time, he might be able to take her away and show her the outer realm. Perhaps he would change his mind then. He had a thought in his heart that he wanted this girl to directly meet the other Jingyin. He then asked curiously, "Why do you call those people from the Lu clan demons? From what you've said, it seems like everyone in this world hates the Lu family to the bone." As far as he knew, although the sky-burning Lu family plundered resources from the various worlds, the sky-burning Lu family didn't have the ability to do so. However, the reputation of the sky-burning Saint dynasty had always been good. After all, they had tens of millions of years of accumulation and their methods were quite gentle. With 800 medium-sized worlds with rich resources as a foundation, it was more than enough for a race. This was why they weren't like other newly risen powers who would use all means to plunder and drain the pond to catch the fish. Instead, they were famous for their management skills. Under the nurturing and protection of the Lu family, they were able to raise their grade. This time, Jingyin hesitated for a moment before saying, "The Lu family rules are that all believers of the Buddhist faction have to pay 60% tax on their income. If they change their faith, they only need 40%. The people of my Leping world have all been taught by the Buddhist faction for hundreds of years, so how would they change their faith so easily?" Zhong Shou shook his head. Those words were obviously not true and were just half-hearted. 60% tax, compared to the Yuanren world, wasn't much. It wasn't too heavy and was something they could afford. If they couldn't take it, they could just change their faith. In terms of kindness, the Lu family had already ruled this world for 20 years. The Buddhist faction had been swept clean long ago. Any kind of kindness would have faded by now. However, the people of this world still weren't willing to yield. There had to be another reason. The strength of their faith in the Buddhist faction could be seen from the thick wish power accumulation in this world. Jingyin was still shallow and really pure. Zhong Shou's face was filled with unhappiness and he couldn't take it anymore. He knew that Zhong Shou was already angry and changed his words. "Although the tax is heavy, it isn't much. However, the Lu family will take 1 out of 10 of the new kids in our Songling world. They forcefully take them away and then we don't know where they are. I heard that they are people of our Songling world and have special bodies." Before he finished, he was interrupted by a dry cough. Zhong Shou looked out and saw a middle-aged beautiful nun walk in from outside the forest. Expressionlessly looking at the red-faced Jingyin, she sighed. "Actually, there is no need to hide it from you. As long as you ask around, you will know a thing or two. The people of our Songling world all have special bodies. They are naturally good at controlling fire. It was said that when all babies are born, there is a little Xiantian fire essence marrow in their brains. It seems to be beneficial to the Lu family. Many people guessed that those kids were forcefully taken away to be used to refine pills. Xiantian fire essence marrow? Zhong Shou was stunned, casually pulling Jingyin into his arms. He grabbed her wrist and then took her pulse. A moment later, his eyes were filled with understanding. It really was the case. There really was such a thing in the brains of the people of Songling world. It should have been there after the mother was born. As time went on, it would slowly be infected by the impure energy. For example, Jingyin only had a little left. However, if the people of this world trained in fire element cultivation methods, they would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort and improve really quickly. As for this Xiantian fire essence marrow, this item wasn't of much use to cultivators. However, to the Lu family people, it was a top treasure. Be it used to refine pills, craft artifacts, or directly consume it, It was beneficial and could strengthen the bloodline power. This was also the reason why the Lu family people only took the babies. He instantly felt annoyed. In the past, he wasn't willing to be with the Lu family because of his parents. Then, at this moment, he really felt disgusted and didn't want to have anything to do with this race. To take the Sciention fire essence marrow, those babies would have no chance of survival. What was the point of eating humans? Such a beast with the face of a human and the heart of a beast actually came from the same bloodline as him. Just thinking about it made him feel uncomfortable all over. This is why, although the taxes of the Lu family are light, the people of our Leping world are always thinking about chasing these demons away. We hope that the unlimited beginning and end Buddha can descend on this Leping world. Chapter 871. However, Xiaoya's tone was filled with pity and helplessness. During these 20 years, no matter how bad the situation was, no matter how the Lu family forced us, our Songling world people didn't have any intentions of changing our faith. The Buddhist scripture that descended 3 years ago made the people of our Songling world all delighted. She smiled bitterly. However, we have waited for 20 years and there are still no results. To the various Buddhist venerables and the unlimited beginning and end Buddha, they probably don't have much time to bother about the wishes of our people. I also thought about how our Buddhist faction has billions of believers. If everyone has wishes, how would the various Buddhist venerables bother about them? Who knows when the unlimited beginning and end Buddha will truly descend? When Jingyin heard this, a weird expression appeared on her face. She exclaimed, "Master? Why do you say that?" Xiaoya shook her head and didn't say anything. Zhong Shou, who was at the side, was enlightened. 1 out of 10, no wonder that Songling world people hated the Lu family so much. He shook his head and could hear the grievances hidden in her words. However, he didn't know about the wishes of the believers in Songling world. Even if he knew, what did the pleas of some people who had nothing to do with him have to do with him? Did he have to give it to them just because they asked? What kind of theory was that? What kind of logic was that? However, when he heard those words, for some reason, Zhong Shou felt guilty. However, if he wanted to snatch food from the tiger's mouth, snatch this Songling world from the hands of the Lu family. Between him and the Lu family, it wasn't just 1 or 2 battles. He shook his head and Zhong Shou tossed aside those thoughts. His parents matter, the battle for the direct bloodline. The grievances between him and Lu Wushuang. His conflict with the Lu family was already problematic enough, and he didn't want to be involved in more. He remembered that Zhao Yanran always said that he was tough on the outside but soft on the inside. He didn't want to admit it. At this moment, if that crazy woman knew what he was thinking, she would definitely mock him. If Iran found out, she would most probably go all out to help the people of this world. Benefactor, please don't blame me. Xiaoya has lost her composure. At this moment, Monk Xiaoya returned to normal and smiled. Actually, I came to find you for another matter. Over the past few days, I've been observing Benefactor's internal condition and have gained some insights. If I'm not wrong, are you also a descendant of the sky-burning Lu family? With a light clang, the food box in Jingyin's hand was knocked over. He looked at Zhong Shou in disbelief. She clenched her fists tightly and gritted her teeth. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of her lips. It was as if she had never thought that the person she had saved out of the kindness of her heart was actually the evil demon that she had mentioned. Zhong Shou, on the other hand, was calm and composed. Exactly. Who knows what Zen Master is planning to do? You want to take my life here to avenge your brothers? Or will you chase me away and leave me to fend for myself? If it was 3 days ago, I might have had such thoughts. Xiaoya shook her head. Benefactor, do you know that a few days ago, the Lu family Yentian Manor suddenly ordered the world to give 10,000 gold and 100 years of lifespan as a reward to find a person with white flames, regardless of life or death. Today, they spread out their claws and fangs to search. They even didn't let go of those places within this world that no one has been to before. This is why Xiaoye boldly guesses that benefactor's situation in the Lu family is worrying. At least you are enemies with the Yantian Manor head and not friends. Your bloodline is pure and your identity in the Lu family is definitely not simple. Zhong Shou had stayed here for several days and roughly knew that the Yantian Manor was the center of the sky-burning Lu family's jurisdiction in this world. The Yantian Manor head was the ruler of this world. He was a really smart person, and even before Xiaoye finished, he already knew what she meant. If they couldn't fight head-on, then they would attack from within. His lips curled up. You are smart to know about the internal conflicts of the Lu family. However, the Lu family has disappointed you. Although I, Zhong Shou, have the blood of the Lu family, I am someone with a different surname. To them, I am just a bastard with a mixed bloodline, a humiliation that they have to get rid of. They have no intention of fighting for the sky-burning Saint Emperor position. I think it is best if you don't have such thoughts. There was no falsehood in his words. Based on what he knew, there were indeed many people within the Lu family who looked at Zhong Shou like that. The moment these words were said, Xiaoye's expression changed. On the other hand, Jingyin heaved a sigh of relief, a relaxed expression appearing in her eyes. How is that possible? Xiaoye gave out an ugly smile and was about to say something. However, Zhong Shou suddenly frowned and looked at the person on the cliff. He was shocked as the two of them followed his gaze and looked over. Moments later, their faces were ashen white like paper, only to see smoke and dust rise up in the distance. A large group of cavalry charged about in the forest. Where they passed, trees were broken and birds and beasts flew away. They were all grade 6 Dao soldiers. There were a total of 2,000 of them who charged outside of the monastery. Even before they smashed into the monastery gates, those believers who were kneeling down didn't stop. All of a sudden, blood and flesh flew all about. Hundreds of people were trampled into meat paste by this cavalry. Xiaoye and Jingyin's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. They quickly closed their eyes and chanted, "Unlimited beginning and end." Zhong Shou's pupils constricted and a cold expression appeared on his face. Without needing to guess, he knew why this army appeared here. Strictly speaking, these people died because of him. Behind the Lu family cavalry, there were tens of thousands of troops that rushed over from behind. They caused the tens of thousands of believers outside of the monastery gates to flee in all directions and be smashed into pieces. Those grade 6 Dao soldiers were still okay. After they arrived, they just stood quietly outside of the mountain gate. The other cavalry soldiers laughed out in an unrestrained manner. Some of them waved their whips and chased after the believers to whip them. Weirdly, although the Songling world people were dodging, they were numb like they didn't care about life and death at all. Sometimes they even stood on the spot and didn't dodge, allowing the mounts to trample them to death or whip them. Zhong Shou instantly frowned. This situation surprised him. These Songling world people were mostly commoners and didn't have the ability to go up against an army. If they resisted now, they would just be asking to die. However, looking at the situation, they didn't fear death. However, since they didn't fear death, then why didn't they go all out to fight against these enemies? Just as he found it weird, Xiaoye opened her mouth. My Buddha said that life is like a dream. Life and death is caused by karma. Life is a continuous line that will go through numerous reincarnations and thousands of lifetimes. This life is just a fragment of this line of life. This is why even if one faces hardships, one doesn't need to be angry and hate. One can bear with it and wait for the next life. If devout believers die, they can enter the pure and peaceful world. Most of these believers had experienced painful and tragic things, and wished that they could die to end it all. They hope for the next life or to enter the legendary pure and peaceful world. Although these people are evil, it is what they want. Zhong Shou was deep in thought when he heard that. He remembered that the Buddhist scriptures didn't say that. Apart from reincarnation, The Buddhist faction also had merit to persuade people to do good. Why was it twisted to such a state in this Songling world? He was furious in his heart. What he hated the most about the Buddhist faction was that the believers chased the next life, the future. What Zhong Shou cared about the most was the present, to fight for every moment. That is because to us, life is so long and we can't see any hope. Rather than living like this, why don't we just die? After saying that, Xiaoye bowed towards Zhong Shou. Just now I did have some shameful thoughts. However, with my current situation, as long as I can help my Songling world people get out of this situation, no matter what, I am willing to try. If I have offended you, please forgive me. At this moment, the temple is busy, so please forgive me for not being able to accompany you. Jingyin's identity is special. Her father and mother both died in battle with the Liu family. Please take care of her. Before she could finish her sentence, there was a change below. A green-armored male rode out from the army. He looked coldly at the tightly shut temple and casually waved his sleeve. It caused the old wooden door to shatter. It was also like a signal. The many armored soldiers behind this person charged into the monastery like wolves and tigers. All of a sudden, exclamations rose up within the temple. The female monks inside were all fleeing in panic. Xiaoye didn't dare to stay any longer, her body flashing as she left this place. Jingyin's hands clenched tightly once more. Just as she was about to leave with Xiaoye, she was suppressed to the spot by a strong power. Without needing to think, she knew that it was done by Zhong Shou. She instantly stared furiously at him. However, Zhong Shou turned his head and looked back curiously. Are you also looking forward to the next life? Jingyin didn't think carefully, instinctively shaking her head. Master said that for us Buddhist cultivators, each reincarnation cycle, each life is really important. We can't be numb and we need to fight back. We can't give up everything because we know about the next life. All the ups and downs are cultivation, and we need to experience them carefully. Zhong Shou's impression of Xiaoye instantly changed. These words were really suitable for him. Since you aren't looking forward to the next life, then let's just wait and see. While he spoke, Zhong Shou's spiritual sense spread out into the distance. He avoided all spiritual senses and covered the entire temple. A cold and sharp expression flashed across his eyes, filled with killing intent. In just 7 days, he would be able to break through to spirit realm and break away from the marrow-burning blood spirit technique. He really didn't want Lu Wushuang to notice his tracks at this time. However, if he had no choice, then he had no choice. He couldn't let the thousands of nuns in the entire temple suffer an undeserved calamity because of him. He saved him but instead caused a calamity for himself. Compared to Lu Wushuang's pursuit, he didn't want to feel guilty towards others. However, moments later, Samuraim's eyes were filled with doubt. The killing intent that was originally raging slowly retracted. The soldiers below seemed really aggressive, some of them had evil looks in their eyes. However, who knows if it was because the sky-burning Celestial Dynasty army was really strict or because they were worried about something. However, within this temple, they followed the rules really tightly. To be continued. Chapter 872. After monk Xiaoye appeared, the Liu family soldiers became even more well-behaved and didn't dare to be arrogant. Even if they did anything, they would just tease or touch the bodies of the nuns. These tens of thousands of people were like locusts as they searched the temple. They dragged out many girls and nuns from the rooms. Most of them were sick people in the temple and 70% of them were pregnant. Their bodies all trembled and their faces were filled with panic. Luckily, those soldiers didn't have any intentions to do anything. Since they didn't find anything in the temple, they spread out into the forest to search. A portion of them headed towards the back mountain. Jingyin's face was filled with worry. Although there was a spiritual formation laid out by Xiaoye and normal people wouldn't be able to notice it, it might not be able to hide it from the Liu family experts. Zhong Shou was really calm. The illusion formation on the cliff was laid out really well. Even celestial realm experts might not be able to see through it. That monk Xiaoye was not only good at medicine, she was also an all-round talent. Moreover, even if people noticed, they would just reveal his identity as the unlimited beginning and end Buddha to have a battle with them. However, the moment such a thought rose up, he heard a loud laugh from below. So, there are other mysteries here. Along with this voice, a crack appeared in the void. Along with a crisp cracking sound, a figure suddenly stepped out from within. It was that green-armored male who seemed to be the commander of the army. At this moment, with a raise of his hand, he tore open the void. He also totally destroyed the illusionary formation here. A fire-like spiritual sense spread throughout the area. Jingyin was the first to be unable to take it. Her limbs went soft as she knelt on the ground. When he saw the two of them in the forest, his brow rose up and then he smiled. As expected, you were hiding here. However, the person who was looking at him wasn't Zhong Shou but Jingyin. As for Zhong Shou, this person just swept him once and didn't pay much attention to him. Lan Jingyin, do you know that I have been searching for you for 4 years? The pain of missing you was really endless and indescribable. He only knew that it was unforgettable. He thought about it day and night, wanting to get close to her. I don't know if I can fulfill my wish today. Grabbing with his hand, a vast and boundless energy forcefully grabbed at Jingyin. He was about to drag her body in front of him. Then, he saw a white jade-like hand suddenly reach out from the side. With a light point, he easily dissipated the energy. It seemed to be effortless, and indeed, he did not use much strength. The green-armored man's expression changed slightly. He frowned and looked at Zhong Shou. This time, he carefully sized it up and then laughed involuntarily. This ability is not bad, just based on this ability alone. There is also a place for you among the immortal step experts. However, I can see that your blood is not flowing smoothly and your chi is clashing. Clearly, you are heavily injured and not far from death. As the azure-armored man spoke to this point, his tone suddenly turned stern. You're just a person who's about to die. Why aren't you recuperating? Why are you here seeking death? You dare to interfere in my, Lu Shichen's matters? Without any signs, numerous sharp shadows spat out from Lu Shichen's sleeves. Many small sword shadows, less than 10 inches long, stabbed over like a storm. Zhong Shou's expression turned serious. His only hand that he could move flicked out in front of his body. It directly caused those thin swords to fly away. At the start, he was still unfamiliar with it, but then he slowly became familiar with it. His two hands were like flowers and butterflies, forming a layer of finger shadows in front of his body. It was watertight, causing the sword light to fly away. At the start, he was still able to hold on. However, slowly, all the remaining energy in his body was used up. Pretty much each strike would cause the wheelchair beneath him to take a step back. When the sword light rushed over and the sword fingers clashed, there would always be a fierce fire energy that would penetrate into his body. It was not a threat to him, but it could cause his limbs and meridians to twitch in pain. Half a breath later, when all the sword light and images dissipated, one could see that the sky was filled with flying swords. Tens of thousands of them spun like a whirlpool, giving off a huge aura as they covered the entire cliff. Lu Shichen's face was filled with surprise. He clicked his tongue. You are actually able to take a strike from me when you are heavily injured. Who knew that in this Songling world, within that old nun's Shuiwen nunnery, there would be such an expert like you? However, looking at your situation today, how many more strikes can you take from me? Zhong Shou's mouth was bleeding. When he heard those words, he only found it amusing. Similarly, an indescribable rage rose up in his chest. He was originally like a god dragon, high up above, roaming the 9 clouds. At this moment, he was being bullied and looked down on by an ant. In his life, he had never been in such a predicament. Slightly shaking his head, Zhong Shou sighed. The situation today was definitely not going to end well. Since that was the case, then why was he hesitating? It seemed like he was going to fulfill the wishes of those Buddhist ancestors and venerables. The moment such a thought rose up, the black and white Dharma in his soul ocean suddenly expanded. Using his spiritual sense, he could feel that the thick wish power that spread throughout the area was boiling. Like a whirlpool, it was swiftly sweeping in all directions like an ocean and a wave. Zhong Shou's spiritual sense suddenly spread out at that moment. With the unlimited beginning and end Buddha statues as nodes, it seemed like there was no end to it as it spread out in all directions. He felt like the entire Tsongling world was being controlled by his spiritual sense. Zhong Shou's spiritual sense instantly went into a daze. An instant later, he came back to his senses. He was filled with disbelief as he used his spiritual sense to wave the wish power. Was this the wish power of the gods? He really didn't dare to think about it. He felt like as long as he was in this Tsongling world, he could do anything. His strength could be endless and he didn't need to worry about not being able to continue. All of the abilities and spells that he had comprehended in the past seemed to be able to be unleashed with extreme ease. At this moment, I just need to craft a relic Dharma and I can use the billions of wishes to attain the unlimited beginning and end Buddha position, God realm, Buddhist faction Bodhisattva realm. Moreover, it is the supreme diamond indestructible disaster crossing golden body of the Buddhist faction. Legend had it that once this ability was formed, not only would one's body be like a celestial artifact, but one would also have an indestructible body. As long as the relic wasn't destroyed, one's physical body would be able to recover endlessly. No matter how heavy one's injuries were, it wouldn't harm the foundations. It was only weaker than the undying indestructible body of those end realm experts. Zhong Shou forcefully suppressed it, going against the temptation of reaching the heavens in one step. He tried his best to use his spiritual sense to control this vast and endless power. Opening his eyes once more, a cold glow appeared in Zhong Shou's eyes as he looked forwards expressionlessly. If the marrow-burning blood spirit didn't act up, this person was just a clown and wasn't worth mentioning. At this moment, he could be wiped out with a flick of his finger. Coincidentally, Lu Shichen casually waved his sword, causing the sword light in the sky to sweep down. Chapter 873. My sword formation is known as the Void-Burning Sword Formation. It came from ancient artifact cultivators and is one of the grade 10 Saint Spirit secret techniques passed down by our Lu family. Today, you should feel honored to be able to die under this sword formation. Many small sword shadows charged down along with Lu Shichen's words. Millions of sword shadows were like a surging river as they descended from the giant whirlpool above. Just as they were halfway down, numerous white flames burned up, covering the sky and covering the earth, giving off a huge aura. Jingyin's face was devoid of blood as she stepped forwards. Just as she wanted to protect in front of Zhong Shou, she was suppressed by Lu Shichen's strong intent such that she couldn't move at all. Zhong Shou laughed coldly. The light around his body started to twist. One side slowly dimmed while the other side was extremely bright. His right index finger flicked out, wanting to destroy this annoying thing that didn't know whether it was dead or alive. However, in the next moment, they heard a cold scoff. "Stop! Lu Shichen, if you dare to kill people here, I will kill you. Even if I have to die together with you, I will ask for justice." Lu Shichen's sword attack stopped. All the flying swords stopped in midair. The few of them looked out, only to see Monk Xiaoya's face was dark and sunken as she walked over from below the cliff. Her gaze was like a knife as she stared at the green-armored male. My Shueiyuan nunnery was built because the manor had personally promised it. Secluded from the world, not passing down Buddhist techniques, not accepting incense, and also not participating in worldly conflict. 20 years, we followed the rules and didn't cross them. You Lu Shichen are trying to kill people here. Are you going against the agreement that year? Lu Shichen's brows were tightly furrowed and then relaxed. Looking at Jingyin, he mocked coldly. That year the manor head had other intentions when he promised you to build this nunnery. It wasn't for you to hide such a person with an unknown background from my Yantian manor. You are referring to Jingyin? Speaking of which, you used the excuse of searching for that Yantian manor criminal because you have ulterior motives, but because of her? Xiao Yu's aura did not decrease but instead increased. She took a few more steps forward. Jingyin has already become a monk a few days ago. She has jumped out of the secular world and no longer has any connection with the Lan family. The manor head had also promised that as long as the people of the Shueiyuan nunnery didn't violate the rules. You can't be bound by the rules of the world. Lu Shichen, it's best if you put away those evil thoughts of yours as soon as possible. When Lu Shichen heard this, he laughed. After becoming a monk, he will jump out of the secular world and no longer have anything to do with the Lan family. Is this the rule you set? I must take her away today. What are you going to do about it? Xiao Yu's expression changed. He then clasped his hands together and bowed, his expression as cold as ice. 10 days from now is the agreed date to hand over the children. If benefactor insists on doing so, I can only break the contract. At that time, please give the manor head an explanation. Lu Shichen's face instantly turned green and white. She stared at Jingyin with longing and unwillingness in her eyes. Then, he stared at Zhong Shou with murderous intent in his eyes. He had scruples in his heart, so he couldn't do anything to these two nuns. However, it was okay to kill the person in front of him. However, Xiao Yu opened her mouth. This person has a deep relationship with the Xiaoya sect. If you dare to touch him, I would rather die than live in dishonor. Lu Shichen squinted his eyes and scoffed coldly. Forget it, 10 days? You can only protect them for 10 days. I can't afford to wait. At that time, let's see what else you can do. After saying this, he waved his sleeves coldly and left. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, but in the end, he retracted his soul. It was best if he didn't use this wish power if he could. Once this person left, Xiao Yu sighed. Her face was filled with bitterness as she sighed. I have frightened benefactor. What a joke. Today, our Shueiyuan nunnery is safe because of the agreement with the Tianyan manor head. Every year, the Tianyan manor would choose pregnant women with great talents who were subjected to the Lu family's secret techniques to be taken care of by our Shueiyuan nunnery so that they could give birth safely. Although we are lucky to be able to delay for a few days, in my heart, I feel really guilty. Xiaoya has sinned a lot and within these few decades, I have been tortured by my conscience. Zhong Shou was startled and looked down the mountain. No wonder there would be so many pregnant women in the nunnery. Giving birth safely and then the children would be taken away by the Tianyan manor to extract the Xiantian fire essence marrow? Speaking of which, this Xiaoya could be killed. Jingyin said unhappily, Master, why do you have to be so bitter? You had no choice at the start. 20 years ago, you went around helping the world, saving who knows how many people? Lu Tianyan used millions of lives to threaten you, so you had no choice. To be able to protect this 3,000 miles of land, you should be really meritorious. Xiaoya's expression was still dim as she shook her head and didn't speak. Zhong Shou was too lazy to listen anymore. There might be a reason within, but it wasn't something he wanted to know and it had nothing to do with him. He only found it weird that Lu Shichen didn't recognize him. That Lu family bloodline was indeed suppressed by his wish power and there weren't any white flames wrapped around his body. However, his appearance couldn't be wrong, right? Lu Wushuang and the Yantian manor searched all around in this world. Didn't they tell the people below what he looked like? Moreover, this person's position in the Lu family wasn't low. He led 2,000 grade 6 Dao soldiers and should be someone with a lot of power in the Yantian manor, so why didn't he know? Zhong Shou found it weird. Suddenly, he had an idea and looked down the mountain. Only to see many soldiers holding scrolls and facing the believers outside of the nunnery, identifying them one by one. Zhong Shou casually reached out, silently and without anyone noticing. He took out a scroll and held it in his hand. With just one look, he broke out into a laugh. As expected, it was his appearance on the scroll, no matter which part it was. His eyebrows, eyes, nose, and ears were all the same. However, when he looked closely, he had a really weird feeling. His impression was totally messed up, right but wrong. There was nothing wrong with the painting, but he couldn't recognize his true appearance. His memory was also in a mess. If one looked at it for too long, one would feel dizzy and dazzled. Messed up technique, so that is the case. Is it the Yantian Manor head? Lu Wushuang only hated that he didn't die, so he definitely wouldn't do anything to the painting. The only person he could think of was the Yantian Manor head. It seemed like that person wasn't loved by everyone in the Lu family. The Lu family head of this world seemed really unwilling to end things and returned so early. Zhong Shou shook his head and returned the scroll in his hand. His eyes flashed as he looked into the sky. Jingyin, if you can complete one wish, what would it be? Jingyin was stunned. First she felt that it was preposterous. Then, Zhong Shou's expression was really solemn. Thus, she instinctively wanted to say that she wanted the unlimited beginning and end Buddha to descend. However, right as she was about to speak, she changed her words. I only hope that all the women in our Songling world won't have the pain of losing a child because of the Xiantian fire essence marrow. Chapter 874. All the women in Songling world wouldn't feel the pain of losing a child because of the Xiantian fire essence marrow? Zhong Shou was silent. In the end, he was still dragged into this. Forget it, he used the wish power of this world to train his body and more or less had some cause and effect. He would do something for the people of this world as repayment. He could also fulfill Jingyin's wish and repay the kindness of saving her life. He was deep in thought as he looked down at the temple below the cliff. These pregnant women seemed to be sent over in batches. There was also a portion of them who were going to give birth in these few days. He didn't notice it before, but now that he looked closely, he realized that the situation wasn't right. There was indeed a secret technique in the bodies of these women. When the babies grew, they were stealing the life force of the mother's body at every moment. After they were born, not only would they be really strong and healthy, but the Xiantian fire essence marrow would also be really pure. However, although this method was amazing, there was something wrong with it. If one didn't control it well, the mother's body wouldn't be able to take it and would die from weakness. This was probably the reason why Tianyan Manor handed these pregnant women to Xiaoye to take care of. Even those beasts wouldn't do such a cruel thing. Laughing coldly, Zhong Shou retracted his gaze. Then, he turned his wheelchair and returned to the only small hut on the cliff. I need to go into secluded meditation for 10 days, don't disturb me. He didn't bother about the shocked gazes of Xiaoye and Jingyin. Zhong Shou waved his sleeves and a few mind stones scattered in all directions, cutting off this straw hut from the outside world. It also blocked out Xiaoye's vision and spiritual sense. With a thought, a full 37 Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth flying swords appeared in front of his eyes. Samuraim's gaze was focused on the white flying sword in the middle that gave off specks of starlight. This was the first celestial artifact grade sword that he had crafted based on the 10 extreme Imperial Dao destruction formation. Actually, strictly speaking, it couldn't be considered a celestial artifact. This sword could only be used by relying on the sword formation and couldn't be used alone. This was why in just a few short days, Zhong Shou was able to craft it. However, he still felt really excited. The moment this sword was formed, his sword formation had a true core. That was indeed the case. Once the sword was integrated into the sword formation became even more powerful. The entire 10 extreme Imperial Tao destruction sword formation changed once more. The 8 swords from before were only to give the sword formation its own bones and support its flesh and blood. However, this sword allowed the other 36 swords to truly possess their own souls. Although it wasn't a sword spirit, it felt even more superior. Power can increase it by nearly double. Just this sword formation alone doesn't require me to control it. Within the celestial realm, there are few who can match him. Zhong Shou had not had the chance to test the formation, but he could roughly guess what it was. He also had a faint feeling that as long as 4 more immortal swords of the same grade were added, this sword formation would be able to produce a complete artifact soul. That's not right. It's not being born, but being resurrected. The artifact soul of the 10 ultimate Imperial Tao annihilation sword formation from the ancient times had reappeared in the world. What a marvelous sword formation! Zhong Shou took in a deep cold breath, disbelief appearing in his eyes. If it wasn't for confirmation, even if the artifact's soul revived, it would be connected to his spiritual sense and would have nothing to do with that ancient person. He would most probably give up on this sword formation. However, if that was the case, he might be able to find the locations of the other swords in the complete ancient sword formation with special methods and spiritual materials. The effects would be no weaker than the swords he personally crafted. Although it was really complicated and needed many precious spiritual materials, however, it was still better than him crafting a new one. Following this, he shook his head. This matter was still extremely far away from him. If this sword formation can be completed, then it might be able to be destroyed. Who knows, it might be able to be on the same level as the common people's sword formation that Shi Zi's master cultivated before he fell and was sealed. Zhong Shou took out the star Tao seeds in his heart space. At this moment, there were a total of 64 of them which wrapped around his body. Following which, he directly injected the ocean amounts of spiritual energy stored in the many celestial stones into the Book of Eon Extreme Life. At this moment, he was unable to use his true chi and spiritual sense. Naturally, he couldn't split his attention to craft the sword. What he had to do now was within these 10 days, which was around 100 days of time. He had to make slight adjustments to the entire sword formation to make it more perfect. When he used it, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. Next would be the star Tao seeds. Within 100 days, he would add another 8 to reach 72 earth fiends. At that time, his foundations would be incomparably firm. Although he wouldn't be able to step into late spirit realm like when he went through his tribulation at the peak of heaven realm. However, he would be invincible among celestial realm cultivators. He was also looking forward to the outcome of his battle with Lu Wushuang. I was chased for a full few months. I need to take back all this anger to be satisfied. Zhong Shou had an idea and looked into his sleeves in shock. My injuries are healed? How quick! With a flick of his hand, a beam of blue light flew out from his sleeve. It was the blue fire Xian turtle that was lightly injured when it took Lu Wushuang's spear attack head-on. Its body actually shrunk and turned into a small turtle, gleefully flying in front of him. It can be big or small, celestial phenomenon. Speaking of which, it has already advanced? Knocking on the turtle shell, Zhong Shou thought to himself that as expected. This fellow was indeed intermediate celestial realm. When it was chased by Lu Wushuang, this fellow fought with him several times. It seemed to have comprehended something and actually charged into the intermediate celestial realm. Apart from that, the wish power in the turtle's body had already disappeared. It should have been digested and used to strengthen its body. The turtle's shell was also shining. This God Realm Xuanwu shell should have been totally refined by it. This item could be compared to a top celestial artifact. Even when it was stabbed by the silver spear, it was perfectly fine. The blue fire Xian turtle's body was a little weak and was slightly injured. Zhong Shou couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. This turtle was a little mysterious. It had just gone through the tribulation for a year and its cultivation actually improved. Little Gold and Hanshi didn't take the chance to catch up. Even in terms of true combat strength, it was really strong. In Zhong Shou's heart, he was looking forward to the other few little things sleeping in the spirit beast bag. That marrow-burning blood spirit technique made him feel really painful. There were several times when he wanted to give up and die just like that. However, it also allowed him to benefit a lot. He could sense that Hanshi was a natural variant, but Little Gold, Xiaori, and the lightning-winged dragon would only benefit more than him. Who knows how much they would grow after they woke up? Just nice, they can help protect me. The blue fire Xian turtle waking up made Zhong Shou feel more at ease. He directly closed his eyes and entered a meditative state. With this beast protecting him, even Lu Wushuang wouldn't be able to do anything. In a short while, he wouldn't be able to do anything to it. After stepping into intermediate celestial realm, it was even more so. The so-called Tianyan Manor was built on the highest peak of Tsongling World. It was 73,430 feet high and could look down on all living beings. On the peak of the mountain, there was a fire cloud that spread 10,000 miles. However, when Lu Shichen stepped into the Tianyan Manor, a cold energy struck his face. The temperature was just right. Although the Lu family people were good at controlling fire. However, he also did not like being in the middle of flames at all times, with the flame as his master. Without needing anyone to report, Lu Shichen headed straight for the main courtyard. After crossing a few courtyards, he arrived in a garden. He cautiously looked around and fixed his gaze on the center of the garden. He saw that there were two people sitting opposite of each other. One of them was the master of the Tianyan Manor, his ruler Lu Yentian. The other person's identity wasn't simple. He was one of the 37 young masters of the Lu family, sky-burning celestial dynasty grade 3 military governor Lu Wushuang. In terms of identity and position, he was above Lu Yentian, who was a world lord. There were many servants who were serving him carefully. What was most eye-catching was the lake not far away. Only to see a 10,000-foot, red-scaled, snake-like giant flame beast coiled up in the lake. Although it was a fire beast, it seemed to like staying in the water. Since Lu Shichen entered, that pair of vertical pupils stared coldly over. That gaze was like it was sizing up food. Lu Shichen was covered in cold sweat. This was Lu Yentian's protector beast, known as the shark snake. It was a natural variant and loved to kill. Although there was only one, it was enough to fight against thousands of protector beasts. It was only late celestial realm, and even god realm cultivators might not be its match. At this moment, even if he knew that this beast was controlled by Lu Tianyan and wouldn't do anything to him, he still felt terrified. Just now, did you go to Shuiwen Nunnery? The voice was calm and came from the side of the stone table. It also caused Lu Shichen to come to his senses. That's right. It was to search for that Zhong Shou. Not long ago, someone saw a ball of white light land near Shuiwen Nunnery. This was why I was suspicious. It was to search for that woman called Jingyin, right? A few years have passed and you still can't forget about her. Lu Tianyan was around 30 years old, dressed in a scholarly robe and looking really scholarly. You're so infatuated with this woman that you've disregarded the rules that I, Lu Tianyan, have set. Lu Shichen's chest and back were drenched in sweat as he bowed deeply. Shichen follows the rules and doesn't dare to mess up Manorhead's matters. If you did, you wouldn't be alive now. I know that you are infatuated with that woman and I want to help you. However, everything needs to be settled first. Before that, don't cause any more problems. Do you understand? Seeing Lu Shichen bow in a well-mannered manner, Lu Tianyan smiled and asked, Since you have already gone, then what is the situation there? When he heard this, Lu Shichen relaxed and bowed once more. Monk Xiaoya's medical skills seemed to have improved a lot. Looking at this batch, those 200 people all look really good. Lu Yentian's eyes lit up as he raised his head and drank the wine in his hand. Let's drink. Without needing to be instructed, a bunch of attendants walked over. The few at the front each carried a tray to Lu Tianyan's side. On the tray were naked kids who were sleeping, not crying or making a fuss. Lu Tianyan casually pointed and pierced the brow of one of the kids. A moment later, he took out a drop of red liquid and swallowed it. Chapter 875. It is indeed delicious. Every time I eat it, I will be impressed by the wonders of this matter. Lu Yentian's face flushed red like he was drunk. In the lake beside, the shark snake suddenly roared out like it was venting its unhappiness. Lu Yentian instantly broke out into a laugh, casually throwing out a claw. Then, he tossed 2 or 3 newborn children over. The way the shark snake ate wasn't as gentle as Lu Yentian. It directly swallowed them in one mouth, grinding them in its mouth before swallowing. A satisfied expression appeared on its face as it dived its giant body into the water. Following which, Lu Yentian smiled towards him. Brother Wushuang, if you like them, just enjoy them. I still have some extra here. If these kids grow up and get tainted by the Hotian energy, they won't be of any use anymore. Lu Wushuang's face was green, his expression was cold. Brother, don't you think your actions are too much? For a drop of Xiantian fire essence marrow, you took a life. How are such actions different from beasts? I also advise you to stop. After this matter, when I return to the Celestial Dynasty, I will definitely report you. Brother Wushuang, are you planning to lecture me? Lu Yentian laughed out loud, his eyes filled with a mocking intent. As for the report, may I ask which rule of the Celestial Dynasty have I broken? Lu Wushuang's brow furrowed. But if you act like this, how will you gain the hearts of the people of this world? Lu Yentian smiled without caring at all. Within this Zongling world, we follow the rules of the Saint Emperor to only take 40% of taxes, and we don't plunder as we please. He also didn't lack any offerings. We also don't go against military orders for war matters. As the head of this world, I feel that I am quite competent. Even the Saint Emperor can't punish me if I don't do anything wrong. The few country rulers also know about this. As he said this, his tone turned dark and cold. You are the direct bloodline of the Lu family, so how would you know the pain of me who is about to fall to the side bloodline? Even if my bloodline increases a little, it is still a surprise. Lu Wushuang kept silent. With the Lu Zi matter before, how would he not know? The value of the sky burning blood did not lie in its flame power. It was the legacy mark that the 3 end realms of the Lu family and dozens of saint realms had carved into their bloodline. With this help, the Lu family could save hundreds and thousands of years of bitter cultivation. And the level of bloodline directly determined the status of a clansman within the clan. He had seen too many tragedies in the clan. However, she could not help but think of Zhong Shou. It was said that before this child was born, his inheritance imprint had already been sealed by a few elders of the clan and the monarch. Only the direct bloodline of the Saint Emperor was passed down. No matter how pure one's bloodline was, it was difficult to obtain too much unless one could break through the shackles. When he was born, he was a dual meridian body, a remnant soul. He should have been unable to cultivate for the rest of his life. His mother was imprisoned by the clan, and his father's whereabouts were unknown. Compared to Lu Wushuang's situation, it was many times more dangerous. Didn't he climb out of the quagmire in the same way? Even if he had the inheritance of the 9-tailed black fox, he had to rely on his own ability to obtain it. Compared to this cousin of his who was close to him, it was that enemy of his that he admired more. Shaking his head, Lu Wushuang got up and stepped out of the void. People of different paths couldn't work together. He also knew that he definitely wouldn't be able to persuade this person. He also wasn't willing to fall out with this person at such a time. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. Lu Yentian's face twitched when he saw this, and then it returned back to normal. I will try my best to deal with Zhong Shou's matter. Within 40 days, I will give Brother Wushuang an explanation. Lu Wushuang's body paused. He didn't agree or disagree as he left silently. In just a few steps, he was outside of Songling World, within a Shuang ocean. Then, he looked towards Songling World and was in deep thought. Just as he stood there for a moment, another person stepped out. It was that handsome scholar from a few days ago. Looking at Lu Wushuang's expression, one could roughly guess. I heard that the Yentian Manor head often uses the Xiantian fire essence marrow to raise his bloodline. Young master can't stand it? Lu Wushuang nodded his head, a look of disgust appeared on his face. It is indeed disgusting, but there is nothing I can do about him. Nothing I can do, the teen's eyes flashed and he smiled. In other words, young master isn't going to bother. Lu Wushuang didn't reply. Although Lu Tianyan was annoying as compared to the Zhong Shou matter, he could toss him aside. If he wanted to find Zhong Shou, he had to borrow his strength. Decades of war, although he was hot-blooded, it was all used up. Speaking of which, it was weird. Who knows what kind of secret technique Zhong Shou grasped? Since he entered this Songling world, he searched everywhere but still couldn't find any traces of him. His bloodline sensing technique was totally useless. Young master is wise. At this moment we need to bear with it. If young master can't stand it, in the future when you inherit the position of shrine, you can naturally block the monster energy. Actually, who knows how many of such things there are within our Lu family? How can we manage all of them? Like he wasn't willing to dwell on this topic, the teen said solemnly, "What did he say about the search?" He didn't mention it. He said that he would give me an explanation within 40 days. 40 days. The teen's brow rose up and then he laughed coldly. In other words, the Celestial Dynasty hopes that you can only return after 40 days? This person controls Songling World and does things according to the rules. Without enough reason, we really can't do anything to him. Lu Wushuang was slightly surprised. You aren't going to persuade me to give up on this person and return? Why go back? Young master was the tallest tree in the forest. Although country ruler Xuanye has high hopes for you, your background is a little poor and you have no one to help you. Now you are the target of everyone. Even without today's matter, I wanted to persuade you to hide your strength for a period of time. The teen said expressionlessly, his eyes shining, "This matter is just nice. I really can't see through Zhong Shou. If he really returns to the Lu family, he will be your enemy. Even if you offend the Saint Emperor, you have to get rid of him. If I don't personally see him die, I won't be at ease. The only thing to worry about is that Lu Tianyan will join hands with Zhong Shou." Lu Wushuang was shocked. Strictly speaking, Zhong Shou was one of the Lu family princes. Since Lu Yentian could join hands with him, then naturally, he could join hands with Zhong Shou. Then, he shook his head. He knew a lot about Zhong Shou. He definitely wouldn't have thoughts of joining hands with the Lu family. Such a possibility was really small. Clenching his fists tightly, Lu Wushuang felt a fire burning in his chest. There was still a month, but he felt like he couldn't even wait for a moment. He really wanted to kill Zhong Shou under his sword right now. At the same time, within Songling World, within Tianyan Manor. Still within the courtyard, Lu Shichen bowed. Beside the stone table, Lu Yentian was laughing softly. "I noticed a suspicious person in Shuiwen Nunnery. He is heavily injured and could be Zhong Shou? Then, have you confirmed it? How confident are you?" Seeing that Lu Shichen didn't dare to speak, Lu Yentian didn't care and just laughed out loud. "Interesting, interesting. What a waste." The sandpiper and the clam fought, but unfortunately, the clam was too small and too weak. It caused him to be unable to benefit at all. The laughter suddenly stopped and Lu Yentian sighed. Chapter 876. A full 72 stars shone above Zhong Shou as they slowly spun. It caused a special suppression to spread throughout the entire straw hut. The blue fire Xian turtle shrunk to the size of a palm, opening its pea-sized eyes as it looked up curiously. His body crouched down, and then he suddenly flew up, as if he wanted to touch it, but he pounced on nothing. Its eyes were filled with annoyance and grievance as it looked back at its master with a grumbling expression. Each of these stars contained a type of great Tao. If it could touch it, it would comprehend some Tao true meanings. This was why it craved these stars. During these few days, it was protecting Zhong Shou in the straw hut. Since it had nothing to do, it chased after these stars. However, there were very few of them that it could touch. Whether or not it could catch them all depended on its master. "You little thing, you have stolen at least 13 Tao true meanings from me and you still aren't satisfied?" Zhong Shou didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw this, his finger viciously smacking on the turtle shell. "Your source is the tough and hard paths, and you also cultivate the cold power. With your bloodline to rely on, as long as you focus on your foundations and improve, you can easily step into the God realm. At that time, it wouldn't be too late to cultivate other things to expand your foundations. If you get distracted and grasp too many things, it would instead be harmful to you." The blue fire Xian turtle tilted its head and thought about it. In the end, it unwillingly nodded its head and gave up. At this moment, apart from these 72 stars, there were a total of 37 white-toothed swords floating around. 3,000 star falling, 10 extreme Imperial Tao Destruction sword formation. At this moment, the two sets of great formations had almost merged into one and were in perfect harmony. At this moment, the star power gathered and the sword energy formed on its own. Not only did it not consume Zhong Shou's strength, but it could also be fed back to Zhong Shou's body. There was a sizzling sound in his meridians. His bones and joints were like fried beans, continuously popping. This was using external strength to forcefully open up his meridians. His meridians, which were slightly blocked due to the impact of the marrow-burning blood spirit art, were once again unobstructed. As for his bones, due to the strength of his physical body, they had reached a new level in just a short 100 days. With an unlimited supply of willpower, he could use it to strengthen his physical body without any scruples. In the past, he had some misgivings and was not willing to get too deeply involved with this Songling world. However, since he had decided to fulfill Jingyin's wish, he didn't have to worry about it anymore. When the body was strengthened, the bones would be the first to benefit. All the bones on his body looked like they were made of jade. Almost every piece was close to 1,000,000. It was said that after one reached peak end realm, one bone was a mountain, the weight of an entire Sumeru mountain. Although Zhong Shou's physical body was still far inferior, he was still extremely powerful in this realm. Not long ago, he had specially tested it. Ordinary dermic armaments and dermic artifacts posed no threat to him. If he used his full strength, he would be able to obtain a mid-grade Dharma artifact. It might be able to injure his body, but it wouldn't be able to harm his bones. With just these two hands, it would be easy for him to resist even a top-notch magical artifact. Success. When the last bit of energy meridians were opened up, Zhong Shou felt like he had swallowed a ginseng fruit. His entire body felt really comfortable. The strengthening of the physical body also meant that this body could take in more power and more bloodline power. It also caused the pain that the marrow-burning blood spirit curse caused in his body to be weakened. Zhong Shou didn't need to use all his strength to suppress this technique. He could even use it to release the effects of the marrow-burning blood spirit curse step by step. However, during these few days, Zhong Shou felt like there was a barrier that he couldn't cross. It was the sky-burning blood. Although his bloodline was still improving, what he could obtain from the legacy mark was getting lesser and lesser. Speaking of which, he had sensed such a situation long before the day. The strength of the sky-burning bloodline was something that only the water Qilin could go up against. However, the legacy mark he obtained from the latter far exceeded that of the former. Seal? Lu family. Zhong Shou gave out a cold mocking laugh and used his toes to guess. He also knew that the Saint Realm experts of the Lu family were blocking him from the source. The legacy memories he could obtain were only from one Saint Realm Venerable and one End Realm. He shook his head. He didn't have much hope and wasn't willing to be affected by the Lu family. As such, it suited him very well. Actually, if he was willing, he could use the billions of wish power in this world to reach the God realm. Even ascending to the deity realm was possible, let alone this seal that was not firm and full of flaws. My injuries aren't healed, but I can still fight. As long as the tribulation arrives, I will be able to suppress this marrow-burning blood spirit curse. Speaking of which, it has already been 10 days. Without any fear, the wooden door opened by itself. At this moment, Zhong Shou didn't need the wheelchair anymore and walked out. It was noon outside. Although Jingyin wasn't there, Zhong Shou saw the food box placed by the door. Smiling, Zhong Shou picked it up. After opening it, a fragrance filled his nose. The food was already cold and he heated it up slightly. Zhong Shou enjoyed the food in the box that Jingyin personally made. Zhong Shou spread out his spiritual sense into the distance. However, after he searched around, he couldn't find any traces of Jingyin. Not only Jingyin, but even Xiaoye wasn't there. That's right. Since it is 10 days later, I have to hand over those kids. I need to move early. This place isn't far from Tianyan Manor. However, with Xiaoye's speed, she needs a day to rush over. He swept with his spiritual sense, and as expected, there wasn't a single kid in the temple. They were probably all taken away. Zhong Shou looked into the distance at the giant mountain in the distance. It was 13,000 miles away, but with his eyesight, he could see it clearly even from here. What thick grievances, who knows how many kids died. However, that is good too. Zhong Shou laughed and then stepped into the air. Since he wanted to end this world matter, then it was best to have a battle in Tianyan Manor. It was exactly what he wanted. If it was any other place, if he couldn't control himself, he would hurt the innocent. Based on what he knew, Lu Yentian wasn't the only one who swallowed the Xiantian fire essence marrow. However, this person needed it to be more precious and pure. The hundreds of thousands of elite troops under him also received fire essence marrow every month. He didn't have a bloodline but could raise his realm. There were even people who worked for Tianyan Manor in Songling World who joined in. Since that was the case, then it wouldn't be a problem to let everyone on the mountain die. They just deserved it. It didn't matter if the scene was a little bigger. As for that Lu Wushuang, he would deal with them all at once. The blue fire Xian turtle seemed to know what he was thinking and gave out an excited cry. Its body spread out and swelled thousands of times. It carried Zhong Shou and swiftly headed towards the mountain peak. At this moment, there was a loud ring from within Zhong Shou's sleeves. Chapter 877. That blue fire Xian turtle seemed to know what he was thinking and gave out an excited cry. Its body spread out and swelled up thousands of times. It carried Zhong Shou and swiftly headed towards that mountain peak. At this moment, there was a loud ring from within Zhong Shou's sleeves. It's Hanshi, speaking of which, it should wake up. Hanshi was a natural variant and wasn't a god beast, so it didn't have a bloodline legacy. Out of the few protector beasts, it should be the first to wake up. Zhong Shou shook his sleeves and as expected, a silver light shot out from his sleeves. Looking closely, one could see that not only was its body covered in silver-white flames, but it was also hidden in a ball of light such that one couldn't see it clearly. Those 6 pairs of wings were becoming wider and wider, spreading out 1,000 feet, flowing light spreading all about. It was obviously a really fierce and violent thing, But it was pure and majestic, like it was created by the heavens. There was also no shell covering its face, and it looked like a human. Looking closely, its face was actually similar to Kong Yao's, both extremely beautiful. Zhong Shou tried to touch it with his fingers and felt that the feeling was similar to human skin. Weird. He knew that this Saint Fire Ant Queen had always placed a lot of importance on its shell. His body was firmly protected within the carapace. For it to give up at this moment was really surprising. Unless this little thing had the confidence to not rely on the thick armor and not reduce its combat strength. He couldn't help but think about it. This natural variant might have a bloodline legacy. However, it was born from the vengeful energy of heaven and earth, and was really created by the heavens. Its connection with the source of the world was probably no weaker than many Saint Realm venerables who had reached the heaven and man as one realm. It might have comprehended something during this deep sleep. A thread of true chi reached in and spread out within Hanchi's body. Samuraim's eyes were filled with understanding. As expected, it is about to form a pill, unlimited amounts of wish power and the impact of the marrow-burning blood spirit technique. It caused Hanchi's strength to charge from the middle spirit realm to the late spirit realm. His progress in mastering the great Tao of light was especially shocking. He was only half a step away from reaching the immortal realm. With his doubts resolved, Zhong Shou smiled again. Feeling that the feeling in his hand was really not bad, he couldn't help but squeeze harder. He then looked at Hanchi's chest curiously. There was no shell there either. It was naked like a fairy, hidden in the clouds and mist. But that was not all. Did he feel like a real person? Hanchi's expression was cold as it let him do whatever he wanted. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. Her silver eyes flashed with a fierce light as she stared at Zhong Shou's fingers. He seemed to be considering whether or not to directly cut off the hand. Zhong Shou smiled awkwardly and quickly withdrew his hand. He secretly mocked himself. He really had no moral integrity. He even wanted to eat the tofu of his own spiritual pet. Unfortunately, Xiari wasn't the first to wake up, otherwise, he could have helped him. Although Hanchi was strong, it might not be able to interfere in such a battle. Searching in his heaven and earth bag, after a long while, Zhong Shou found a silver-white veil and tossed it over. Since you chose to turn into a human, then you should have the shame of a human. Hanchi didn't reject and draped the veil over its body. This was something that Zhong Shou snatched from who knows where. It was an intermediate magical treasure that could change its size. It was probably a spoil of war from the Taoist faction and was of decent quality. Zhong Shou kept it in his collection, but he hadn't been able to use it. When one wore it, apart from covering one's body, it could also protect one's body. Zhong Shou didn't bother about Hanchi and stepped forward. That blue fire Xian turtle instantly spread out its 12 pairs of ice wings. The giant turtle's body seemed huge, but when it flew, it was extremely quick. In just a few breaths, it was outside of the mountain peak. 1,000 miles away was where Tianyan Manor was. There were restrictions here, apart from the fiery clouds. Apart from the clouds, there were also numerous killing formations. Dozens of times stronger magnetism power covered the area. Be it humans or beasts, they couldn't fly here and could only walk on the ground. It was like it was showing off the supreme position of Tianyan Manor in this world. Zhong Shou didn't have any intentions of hiding this time. It was best if he startled the snakes and captured all of them at once. He wanted to use the blue fire Xian turtle to forcefully charge in. However, his heart jumped as he sensed someone. Jingyin, a familiar aura, was 1,000 miles away at the foot of that giant mountain. Zhong Shou smiled and didn't think about it. The sword chi suddenly burst out from within his body, and a majestic will spread out, making him even more flamboyant. Just the pure sword intent was able to forcefully rip open a hole in the various restrictions in front of him. When the blue fire Xian turtle saw that, it instantly laughed out loud like it was delighted. Its body burned with green flames, along with its 10,000 feet body. It looked even more majestic. It flew in the air, and showed no signs of slowing down. Then, like a shooting star with a loud explosion, it smashed into the various restrictions. All of a sudden, numerous spiritual patterns flashed from all directions. The scarlet fire cloud also swept over. The blue fire Xian turtle didn't care at all, barbarically charging forwards. The cold power green flames spread out, causing the flame power to be unable to get close to 1,000,000 feet. Within 1,000,000 feet, it was an ice-cold snow world. At the start, the formation was able to restrict and block it, but in just a moment, under the domineering strength of the blue fire Xian turtle, the restrictions started to break down bit by bit. 1,000 miles was covered in just a breath. Finally, some of the people on the gigantic fiery mountain peak reacted. Thousands of war chariots flew into the sky one after another. Arrogant animal! Seeing that you are intelligent, you should know that this is our Tianyan Manor's forbidden land. Zhong Shou was too small and these people didn't notice him. Numerous spears and arrows shot towards the blue fire Xian turtle. The turtle didn't care at all. It was a beast king in the past, a true barbaric beast. Although it had obtained many benefits from following Zhong Shou, its personality couldn't be unleashed and it had always felt really frustrated. At this moment, the turtle knew that as long as it didn't annoy the person on its back, it could do whatever it wanted. It also knew that Zhong Shou wanted to wipe out this place, so its violent thoughts became more and more uncontrollable. It made up its mind to vent its anger. It waved its two giant shields. The shield on the left casually waved and smacked away all the spears and arrows. The shield on the right smashed over. The tyrannical gravity smashed 100 war chariots and the people on them into meat patties. Then, the giant shield split apart. Thousands of shield wheels and numerous spinning saw teeth. After a round of killing, hundreds of chariots were smashed into pieces, blood raining down. The remaining people finally knew that this turtle wasn't easy to deal with. They hurriedly retreated back into the giant mountain. The blue fire Xian turtle still wasn't willing to stop, its eyes staring fiercely into the mountain. Just as it was about to chase into the mountain, he felt another tremor pass through his back. It knew that its master was unhappy and told it to calm down. Only then did it stop. It unwillingly pressed the light down towards the foot of the mountain. There were numerous people here. All of them were ashen white as they knelt at the foot of the mountain. Roughly looking out, there were millions of them. Jingyin, who Zhong Shou wanted to find, was among them. Like they were shocked by the movement above the mountain peak, their eyes were filled with shock and loss as they looked at the giant green turtle above their heads. Zhong Shou just took a look and didn't care. He casually grabbed and pulled Jingyin up from the crowd onto the turtle's back. Then, he saw that this girl's face was covered in tears, making one feel pity for her. At first, his face was filled with confusion. Only when he saw Zhong Shou at the side did his eyes focus, and he was even more shocked. Its little benefactor, then, he thought back to how the tortoise below was sweeping across the sky. Close to 1,000 Tianyan Manor people were being tortured and killed. For Zhong Shou to be able to stand on the turtle's back, one didn't need to think to know who this giant beast belonged to. Her face instantly turned ashen white and was filled with fear. This is Tianyan Manor. She also knew that Zhong Shou's strength was definitely not ordinary. 10 days ago, she could see that. However, a few days ago, she was lucky enough to save this person. He was also badly injured such that he couldn't even move his limbs. At this moment, although his aura was better, it was still really dark. I know that this is Tianyan Manor, where the Lu family world lord is. Zhong Shou nodded his head to express that he understood. Then, he asked, "You cried just now? Speaking of which, those kids have been sent up?" Jingyin wiped her tears. "I wanted to go with Master to see if we could beg the Yantian Manor head to show some mercy. However, Master wasn't willing." She was really anxious, thinking to herself, why did this person still have the mood to ask such things? If she fled now, she should still be able to make it. She raised her head and looked up. Instantly, the last bit of blood disappeared from her face, only to see that at the waist of the mountain, many spiritual lights flashed and spread out in all directions. No matter how ignorant she was, she knew that this was the sign of the formation opening up. Tens of thousands of chariots flew up. There were also 12,000 cavalry who flew into the air. Jingyin recognized that these were the red flame-burning cavalry, the grade 6 Dao soldiers of the Lu family. Zhong Shou didn't seem to notice anything. Instead, he frowned and looked at the dense crowd at the foot of the mountain. Why did these people come? He could have used it without any fear. However, with these people here, he had to worry to avoid harming the innocent. How problematic. You still have the mood to ask about this. If you don't leave, you will be in trouble. Jingyin was a little exasperated. However, when she said these words, Zhong Shou had no intention of leaving. The tortoise below was also lazy. The thousands of grade 6 Dao soldiers had already surrounded the area. Layers upon layers of barriers covered an area of 100,000 feet around the mountain. Jingyin totally lost all hope. Her face was ashen white as she replied, "They are all our kids who were chosen by those evil demons. They all rushed to the foot of the mountain, hoping to plead for leniency. In the past, there were many of them, but now there are fewer and fewer. They know that it is useless even if they beg." Chapter 878. Zhong Shou acknowledged and didn't pay much attention to it, looking up once more. These people had no way to resist, so they could only do so. They couldn't scold them. With millions of people here, they couldn't just spend more effort. The red flame-burning cavalry stepped in midair. They circled in the air and then stopped. They were in an orderly formation, hanging in the air calmly. He could also sense that there were a few strong spiritual senses above that were looking over at this place. Following this, a laugh spread over. "I was wondering who it was, so it was you. Why? Your injuries just got a little better and you can't wait to ask to die? 10 days ago, Xiaoya, that old nun, protected your life. Today you probably won't have such luck." There was a hint of frivolity and mockery in his voice. Zhong Shou recognized that this person was Lu Shichen, who he met 10 days ago at the back mountain of Shuiwen Nunnery. His lips curled up coldly as he shook his head. Zhong Shou was too lazy to reply, kicking the turtle shell. "Blue Fire, what are you standing there for? You can attack. First, break the foundations of the mountain. Today, we won't leave a single blade of grass here." The eyes of the Blue Fire Xian turtle lit up, baring its teeth and laughing. The 12 pairs of ice wings spread out and once again smashed towards the mountain peak. Jingyin saw this and was astonished. She instinctively exclaimed, "Benefactor, what are you doing? You can't." Before he could finish his words, a loud boom was heard. The mountain shook, sand and stone all fell. The restrictions here were also collapsing piece by piece. This Blue Fire Xian turtle was extremely strong. A few days ago, Zhong Shou injected wish power into it and it raised its grade. Its strength increased by a full 5 times. After using the Xuanwu body protecting energy, it was totally unaffected by the restrictions and spells of the formation. Its 10,000-foot body waved 2 giant shields. It smashed its way over. Its aura was really strong. The energy spread all about, causing dust and dirt to fly up. It caused the faces of the millions of people at the foot of the mountain to turn ashen white. However, there was a strange force protecting this place. Although the energy was vast and strong, it didn't hurt them at all. Zhong Shou stood steadily on the tortoise's back and answered, "Don't you want all the women in the Zongling world to not have the pain of losing their children because of the Khanate fire Yuan marrow? Since you saved my life, I will fulfill your promise. At this moment, we naturally have to attack and get rid of the main culprit." When Jingyin heard this, she couldn't help but let out a sigh. She only felt that it was inconceivable. However, before he was able to think, he saw tens of millions of arrows fly down from above. One after another, spiritual spells were unleashed and filled the entire place. It was as though it was the end of the world. However, in the blink of an eye, the sky above returned to normal. At first, Jingyin didn't know what was going on until she shifted her gaze to the side, tens of thousands of feet away. Only then did he realize that it was Zhong Shou who used a secret technique to teleport the arrows, spears, and even spells hundreds of thousands of feet away. On the other side, the energy exploded, and the spirit energy shook. A full 30,000 feet around was turned to dust. It also destroyed many of the restrictions and spiritual talismans in the formation. However, the commotion there didn't affect them anymore. Even if there were ripples, under the protection of the Xuanwu body protecting energy, they wouldn't be hurt at all. That blue fire Xian turtle didn't fear anything at all. It smashed the shield above its head, forcefully breaking a hole in the formation. Whoever it didn't like would be smacked over with the shield. Whoever dared to block it would spit out blue flames to freeze them into ice shards. It crushed them all along. Then, it smashed into the foot of the mountain, causing a shocking explosion. At this moment, the entire mountain peak was covered in spiritual light. Numerous restrictions and formations appeared in the air before instantly collapsing. They turned into numerous specks of light and scattered in the air. Where the blue fire Xian turtle smashed into was where Zhong Shou pointed out, a core of the formation. After smashing into it, 20% of the protective spiritual formation of Tianyan mountain power was instantly reduced. The outer portion was half of the outside world. At this moment, a cold scoff spread out from the air. A green-colored person suddenly charged down from the mountain peak. It was Lu Shichen. He was dressed in green armor, riding a four-eyed and six-legged red mount as he arrived in front of the red flame-burning cavalry. Instantly, red flames burned and swept the sky. An extremely sharp intent charged towards where Zhong Shou was standing. Anyone who offends my Tianyan manor will be killed. You are asking to die. Do you really think that with such a god-beast protector beast you can do whatever you want in this world? Preposterous. Those 10,000 red cavalry instantly galloped and charged down from 100,000 feet in the air. The crimson flames also faintly gathered into a cone shape. The strength of 10,000 grade 6 iron cavalry instantly merged into one. Lu Shichen led the way, and when he was close to 30,000 feet, he slashed down furiously with a sword. He was peak celestial realm, and this sword gathered the strength of 10,000 red flame-burning cavalry. It caused the entire space to twist and collapse. Zhong Shou's eyes squinted. Under the flames, there was no space left. Burning laws, burning the Tao. This was the true sky-burning flame. Zhong Shou had only seen it in the bloodline legacy mark. At this moment, Lu Shichen's sword had some of the true intent of the sky-burning flame. However, he didn't really care and instead scoffed in disdain. He couldn't sit still anymore? The truly exciting part had only just begun. Tianyan Manor, within the main hall. Lu Yentian was really calm as he sat on the throne in the middle of the hall. He looked like he didn't care about the commotion below. However, if one was familiar with him, they would be able to see the darkness in his eyes. Interesting. Really interesting. I, Lu Shichen, am being so unrestrained. This is the first time in 30 years that this has happened. Although he was laughing, it caused the people in the hall to keep quiet out of fear. As long as one had some intelligence, they would be able to hear the killing intent within. Xiaoya's brow was furrowed and she stood solemnly at the side. She was also surprised by what happened today. Who knew that Zhong Shou, who was healing up, would actually dare to ride a celestial-grade god beast to charge up Tianyan Mountain? Her heart was filled with bitterness and helplessness. She was having a headache about how to protect Jingyin. She did not expect that the person she had saved with her own hands would suddenly cause such a huge disaster. This person's strength was indiscernible. If he could heal up, then she might have some hope. However, she saw that although his meridians were no different from normal people, he was still normal. However, at this moment, he was like a normal person, obviously unable to use his true power. Since that was the case, then he should have just stayed in Shueihua Nunnery. Why did he have to come here? To cause a problem? At this moment, she only hoped that the Tianyan Manor head would totally forget about her. Her mind spun quickly as she tried to think of a way to get away. However, what she was afraid of would happen. Lu Yentian's gaze looked coldly towards her. Not bad this time. Out of 600 women, 90% gave birth successfully. I took a look just now, they are all top-quality Xiantian fire essence marrow. It is enough for what I need and more than enough. Xiaoya kept silent and didn't speak. Being praised like that only made her feel sad. Even if she went all out to take care of those pregnant women, it was mostly because she couldn't bear to see them die when they were giving birth. Could she say things like thank you for the praise and that she didn't dare to accept it? Begging was useless, and since she couldn't fight back, she could only keep silent. If she was right, then there should be something else after those words were said. As expected, Lu Yentian's tone changed. However, what is going on with this person? I heard Shichen mention that this person was healing up in your Shueihua Nunnery? Looking at his appearance, he is similar to the person I am searching for. Monk Xiaoya, how are you going to explain this? Xiaoya expected that and bowed. When I saved them, it was before the manor head put him on the wanted list. Saving a life is better than building a 7-story pagoda. Since I saw him, how could I not help? I don't know anything about his identity and background. She continued, a month ago, I compared their appearances and didn't find any similarities. I really didn't expect that he was the person Manor Head was searching for. If Manor Head wants to use this as an excuse to punish me, then there is nothing I can do. Lu Yentian was startled. He gritted his teeth and laughed coldly. You are really sharp-tongued, you are really good at shirking responsibility. However, I want to ask you about your heart, you really don't know anything. Forget it. Since you have your reasons, I won't punish you heavily. Next month, I will increase the amount by 100. There won't be a next time. As Xiaoya listened on, her face slowly turned ashen white and she was totally stunned. She gritted her teeth and kept silent, not willing to reply. Lu Yentian didn't care. After today's matter, he naturally had a way to let her do as she wished. Lu Yentian's lips curled up and a smile appeared in his eyes. Although he lost some face today and the foot of the mountain was in a mess, he didn't lose out. Inform my brother Wushuang that his enemy has appeared. If he doesn't come, then he will regret it. Before he finished, another person walked out. Manor Head, if that is the case, it will be hard to explain to the Celestial Dynasty and the 2 country rulers. Lu Yentian expressionlessly swept over, only to see a 40-year-old middle-aged man wearing a scholar's robe. He was also his subject and was called Lu Jun. His position was similar to Lu Shichen's and his strength was similar too. However, this person wasn't serving him. Shaking his head, Lu Yentian's tone was filled with disdain, and he burst out laughing. Explain what? I have tried my best to delay. This Zhong Shou wants to die, so he can't blame me. No matter who it is, they can't say that I am not. Moreover, even if we want to hide it, we might not be able to. How would that person not know about such a huge commotion? He is already here. As he said this, Lu Yentian took out a red blood drop from the plate at the side and placed it in his mouth to taste. Tell Lu Shichen to show mercy. This person is the heir to our Lu family and has Fengjue as his shield. He is also the grandson of the Saint Emperor. Even if the Saint Emperor hates the Zhong family to the bone, he can't let us take his life. He isn't someone he can offend. Let my brother Wushuang deal with him. What a waste. Before he finished, the foot of the mountain shook once more. Lu Yentian frowned and then his expression changed. Chapter 879. Lu Shichen's sword slashed down. Any red sword light that shot out would cause all the laws of heaven and earth, all the laws of the universe to collapse. The destructive power and the sky-burning flames swept up a storm and swept across the sky. This world was like that, much less Zhong Shou and the blue fire Xian turtle. The Xuanwu body protecting energy was only able to block for a moment before it was sliced open. Jingyin's face was ashen white. Under the sword suppression, she was actually able to stand upright. She instinctively closed her eyes and was prepared to die. With such an aura, she really didn't think that the two of them and one beast had any chance of survival. Zhong Shou didn't even take a look, his right hand pointing out like he was grabbing a flower. It was precisely at the sharp point of the fiery sword qi. It was also at this moment. A pair of black flame wings suddenly spread out behind his back. A full 60,000 feet spread out. Then, there was a pop sound as a storm rose up where the finger shadow and sword energy clashed. Unexpectedly, the scarlet-red burning sky sword qi crumbled. The energy even backfired. Behind Lu Shichen, within the fire clouds, dozens of level 6 crimson flame incineration cavalry instantly exploded into minced meat. There were hundreds of people who coughed out blood. They were either lightly or moderately injured. Lu Shichen himself flew back 10,000 feet before he managed to stabilize himself. His eyes were filled with shock. Just now, he didn't know what was going on. He only felt that the energy meridians behind his back were about to collapse. However, the entire cavalry formation was showing signs of collapsing. Then, when Zhong Shou pointed over, he didn't use much strength and easily broke his sword attack. He even used a portion of it to counterattack. He spread out his spiritual sense, and only then did Lu Shichen know the reason. Around 10,000 feet away, there were over 30 crimson-armored cavalrymen who were also mounted on four-eyed steeds, and they were looking in this direction with perplexed expressions. Lu Shichen's eyes were first filled with rage and then turned dark and sunken. He knew that these people should have been teleported out of the formation by Zhong Shou using some unknown technique. This caused the energy meridians within the cavalry formation to be blocked and unable to gather strength. Instead, a flaw appeared, giving this person an opportunity to take advantage of. Fighting strength with strength, they were defeated by their own hands. Dirty tricks. That's all there is to it. With a cold snort, the red figure circled down once more. More than 10,000 iron cavalry galloped through the air and instantly reorganized their formation. From afar, it looked like a gigantic fire snake slithering in the air. Like a venomous snake flicking its tongue, a scarlet sword light instantly slashed out. The sword momentum was even sharper and more domineering. However, the red flames retracted slightly and locked down the surrounding space. Zhong Shou couldn't help but shake his head. At this moment, only he could see the 72 star Dao seeds that densely covered his body. In the past, when he was not satisfied with the number of earthly fiends, he could only shift his body. At this moment, as long as anything in the world was within his power and touched by his stars, he could directly change space. This Lu Shichen, I really don't know if I should say that he is stupid or that he is too conceited. He didn't even know what kind of technique he was using, yet he still foolishly rushed over. Did he really think that his 3,000 star falling was a normal space teleportation technique? With a thought, dozens of stars instantly flashed in the air. Dozens of red flame-burning cavalry were teleported out of the formation. The flames that suppressed space were totally useless. The entire cavalry formation's energy meridians were blocked up once more. That red sword glow turned obscure and unsettled. Zhong Shou called out the nameless sword, casually slashing and shattering this sword that could fight against God Realm cultivators. The wind spread all about as the sword shadow swept backward. The fire cloud instantly dissipated and hundreds of red flame-burning cavalry were killed by the energy that was scattered. Vital energy and essence directly turned into streaks of spiritual light that were forcefully absorbed by the nameless sword. Feeding it back to Zhong Shou, the sword energy became even stronger. It split into thousands and swept through the air. Who knows how many more red flame-burning cavalry corpses fell from the sky. Vital energy gathered and gathered on the body of the nameless sword, its aura vast and fierce. It was only at this moment that the rest of the red flame cavalry finally thought of the word escape, and the strict cavalry formation immediately scattered like birds and beasts. The fire cloud that gave off a vast aura also disappeared. Lu Shichen was in an even worse state. He was the one who suffered the heaviest injuries from that strike. Then, the numerous blood-colored sword lights chased, and a large half of them followed behind him. He barely managed to dodge the attack, but his body was also slashed with several shocking wounds. Although it was only a light injury and not fatal, Lu Shichen's face was extremely ugly. The person in front of him was obviously badly injured. He didn't even use a tenth of his cultivation. When they exchanged blows just now, he could clearly sense from the sword force that it was indeed weak, and it was barely holding on. However, at this moment, how was he able to force him into such a bad state? At this moment, he was 90% sure that this person was Zhong Shou. This was the Lu family's legendary dual meridian body trash? Then what was Lu Shichen? Lu family direct bloodline. It was said that before this person was born, a few elders and country rulers sealed half of his bloodline. However, even then, he was far stronger than him, right? Looking down, Zhong Shou was expressionless, only his lips were smiling. Like he was mocking him. Even if he could only use 10% of his strength, he could still toy with him. Lu Shichen, a side bloodline bastard, what was he? He thought back to the words he said to this person a few days ago. Lu Shichen's face instantly turned purple. At this moment, he only hated that he wasn't able to kill this Zhong Shou at that time. Today's humiliation, 10,000 red flame-burning cavalry, in just 2 clashes, he lost 10% of them. Who knew how he was going to answer to the manor head? He looked at Jingyin, who was looking around at a loss. Lu Shichen's face was twisted and vicious. He took in a deep breath, the veins on his arm popping out. Not bad. However, today, even without using Dao soldiers, I can still kill you here. Along with this cold scoff, numerous small flying swords surged out from his sleeves. If he could, he really wasn't willing to fight with this person. It was best if he stayed far away. However, today, be it for personal or public reasons, he couldn't retreat. If he couldn't retreat, then he could only fight to the death. Lu Shichen flew down once more, pretty much merging into one with the sword in his hand. The sword chi was like a rainbow, and the small flying swords also joined in one after another, forming rows upon rows. Man and sword merged into one. The sword attack was extremely sharp. Although it wasn't as domineering and sky-burning true intent as before, the strength was more condensed and harmonious. Only then did Samuraim reveal a look of praise. That Dao soldier wasn't useless. However, unless it was suppressed by someone whose control of space laws wasn't much weaker than his, it was useless. If not, it was better not to have it. However, this Lu Shichen obviously didn't have such ability. Although this person only used his own strength and didn't borrow the strength of the army, it was much harder than before. However, compared to the previous 2 attacks, it was even more difficult for him to deal with. He had to expend slightly more energy. However, it was just that, his eyes constricting, Zhong Shou's aura turned cold and solemn. He was too lazy to tangle with such a small person. Because of this person, he had wasted close to 2 breaths of time, which made him a little impatient. It was best if he ended it as soon as possible. The killing intent in his chest became more and more intense. He only wanted to wipe out this entire mountain in the next moment. Zheng. The sword body rang out and a giant coiling dragon appeared behind Zhong Shou. A blood-colored sword light shot out like a dragon spinning. The thousands of Grade 6 Tao soldiers' vital energy and spiritual energy all exploded out at that moment. The blue spirit flame burned in his soul ocean like a flood, charging into the river that had been dry for a long time and irrigating the wilderness. It caused Zhong Shou's aura to rise by several times at that moment. 99 long ing stacking. 9 types of true dragon sword techniques instantly stacked into one. In the blink of an eye, sword shadows flew in the sky. Using offense against offense, it was even stronger and more overbearing, causing those 5-inch thin swords to be forcefully smashed away and scattered. Many sword lights sliced, and in the blink of an eye, Lu Shichen was all alone. He had no choice but to turn from defense to offense. He could only look on as those 5-inch thin swords were sliced down, scattered, and broken into pieces. The sword attack was like a dragon, like the Milky Way rolling backwards, endless. It was also like a storm, making one unable to adapt to it and unable to deal with it. He felt like he was a woman who was being raped, his clothes being ripped off piece by piece. The sword formation collapsed and all the sword artifacts were destroyed. Even the sword in his hand was unable to be protected. It was casually sliced by that blood-colored sword light and a portion of it was cut short. Each time they clashed, there would be balls of spiral energy that would enter his body. It caused his true chi to scatter and his meridians to be in a mess. His body-protecting energy was also unable to block the sword light. If this went on, he would die. Lu Shichen only felt despair. He wanted to go all out, but there was nothing he could do. Like a fish that had fallen into a net, any struggle was useless. At this moment, his life and death was in Zhong Shou's hands and he couldn't even think about it. What chance did the person opposite him have of letting him go? That blue fire Xian turtle laughed out loud, filled with a thick mocking intent. It was really clear that if the person on its body was willing, he just needed one strike to totally collapse this mountain. None of the people on the mountain could escape. He would crush and kill them all. However, for some reason, he had a chance to step into God Realm, but he wasn't willing to take that step. Today, he could have ended this matter with one strike, but he had to make it so complicated. However, this human in front of it was really dumb, actually daring to offend its master, lazy to look. The blue fire Xian turtle waved the giant shield once more and smashed forwards. Another large portion of spiritual patterns and restrictions were forcefully destroyed by its strength. It caused the entire mountain to shake once more. This strike had already touched the core of the formation. Just at this moment, a cold scoff spread down from the mountain peak. Preposterous! A green light landed along with the voice. Just one look and it caused one's emotions to go into chaos. The blue fire Xian turtle curled its lips in disdain. This was another person who didn't know his place. Who knew who the truly preposterous person was? On the turtle's back, Zhong Shou had no intention of stopping. The sword light changed, covered in a green light. With a light slash, Lu Shichen's head was directly sliced off. Chapter 880. Lu Shichen's body suddenly fell from the sky, causing the entire Tianyan mountain to be totally silent. Zhong Shou himself acted like he had done something insignificant and didn't care at all. Jingyin, who was beside him, sucked in a cold breath. Lu Shichen was the general of the Yantian house, the commander of those 12,000 red flame-burning cavalry. His position in Songling world could be said to be below one person and above everyone else. However, today, he died under Zhong Shou's sword just like that? All of a sudden, she rubbed her eyes in disbelief. What was going on today? First, it was the arrogant red flame iron cavalry who had never met an opponent in Songling world. In front of Zhong Shou, they suffered several setbacks and lost many soldiers. Next, it was the Lan family blood debt. Lu Shichen, who was stained with the blood of her family and had bad intentions towards her, was slain with one sword. His head was sliced into two and his soul was wiped out. She couldn't help but look at Zhong Shou in shock. She thought back to the words he said to her before. You saved my life and I will promise you one thing. Could he really cause all the girls in Songling world to not have the pain of losing children because of the Xiantian fire essence marrow? However, Zhong Shou's injuries hadn't healed up yet. At the foot of the mountain, the millions of people were all stunned as they looked at the scenes in the sky. After being stunned for a moment, some people knelt down on the ground. Merciful and merciful, saving the world, future unlimited beginning and end Buddha. They didn't know who Zhong Shou was, but they recognized the attire of the Shueiyue nuns. Even if he wasn't the beginning and end Buddha, he definitely had a deep relationship with the Buddhist faction. With one person like that, the people around all followed closely behind. Thus, millions of chanting voices rang out at the foot of the mountain. Zhong Shou only felt that the wish power suddenly became much thicker in the blink of an eye. He could only be speechless and not bother about it. He allowed the blue fire Xian turtle to carry him towards the peak of the mountain. Did he have to explain to them that he had nothing to do with the future unlimited beginning and end Buddha? Actually, speaking of which, he wasn't wrong. The tortoise beneath his feet was indeed valiant. Without Lu Shichen blocking the way, a few more shields smashed out, causing the protective formation here to become even more chaotic. He also had thick armor and Xuanwu body protecting energy. Even if he activated spiritual restrictions or was struck by the recoil of the formation, he didn't care at all. He barbarically charged 80,000 feet into the air once more. He was now very close to the Tianyan Manor at the peak of the mountain. The fire light here was dim. Looking at it, a large portion of the sky was unable to stop people from flying. At that moment, the palace of the Tianyan Manor no longer looked grand and imposing. It was only because many of its walls and buildings had collapsed. Dozens of figures floated in the air and looked over. The person in the lead was a scholar in a green robe. He was an extremely cultured person. His face was fair and beardless, and his phoenix eyes looked over coldly. Without a doubt, he was the lord of Tianyan Prefecture, Lu Yentian. Zhong Shou didn't care about this person's gaze at all. He glanced around. He only felt that apart from this person and Xiaoye, there weren't any other outstanding people in this huge Tianyan manor. At most, they were like Lu Shichen who couldn't enter his eyes. Lu Wushuang didn't seem to be here. Only in the courtyard in the distance, there was a fierce and violent aura which made him feel wary. Not only him, but Hanshi was too. Its expression was really serious as it spread out its 12 wings. Its 3 pairs of knife arms were tensed up and ready to strike. It was filled with deep animosity like it was facing an enemy. Natural variant, in truth, there can only be one Gu in heaven and earth. This is why I can't let it meet. Such words flashed across Zhong Shou's mind. Legend had it that these beasts were born from the vengeful energy of heaven and earth. Once they met, they would fight to the death, not stopping until one of them died. Only when one side died would it end. Once it could swallow the other party's essence energy, its strength would increase greatly. It was similar to a Gu bug, but it was born from heaven and earth. Thinking about it, Zhong Shou patted Hanshi's head to console it. A protector beast was not only a servant but also a partner. Usually, it would listen to his orders and fight with the enemy. When it faced something it couldn't defend against, as its master, he had the responsibility to block the calamity for it. The natural variant in the lake was Peak's celestial realm. At this moment, Hanshi definitely wasn't its match. Like a shark and a snake, how weird, Zhong Shou shook his head. Hanshi on his side was more likable and looked really cute. However, he really didn't expect that the Tianyan Manor head would have such a trump card. In terms of combat strength, it wasn't much weaker than Lu Wushuang. In today's battle, he had one more opponent. Just as he was thinking about it, Lu Yentian retracted his dark and cold expression and smiled. Is that brother Lu Shou? Songling World Yentian Manor Head Lu Yentian greets Your Highness. The moment he said this, not only were the people behind him moved. Jingyin was also shocked. She remembered that Zhong Shou said that he had nothing to do with the Lu family. However, why was he the young master of the Lu family? Xiaoya's eyes lit up as she looked at the turtle's back. My surname is Zhong, I really don't know who Lu Shou is. Zhong Shou shook his head expressionlessly. However, he didn't have any intention to argue with this person because of his identity. He wasn't used to having his words controlled by others. His gaze swept past the people on the other side, past Lu Yentian, and towards the Great Lake. You have a natural-born xenogeneic as well. Not bad. If you are willing to hand it over, I can leave your corpse intact. I will allow you to reincarnate into the animal path, and after 300 lifetimes, reincarnate as a human. The animal path was a Buddhist faction theory, one of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Zhong Shou naturally didn't have such ability, but today he said that. Anyways, the person opposite him most probably wouldn't agree. He was waiting for Lu Wushuang to rush over. Moreover, it was okay for him to talk some nonsense. However, the moment he said this, the entire Tianyan manor was totally silent. No one spoke. Only the Jiao snake let out a groan. Its head suddenly pulled out from the water, revealing a giant body. This beast was intelligent and could understand Zhong Shou's words. A red glow flashed in its eyes, it was obvious that it was furious. A huge suppression spread across the area. A moment later, Lu Yentian forced out a smile. Allow me to reincarnate. Your Highness really talks big, what a domineering personality. He was really shrewd and didn't show his emotions on his face. However, today, Zhong Shou's words nearly caused his chest to explode. Unfortunately, I have raised this beast for a long time and treated it like family. I really can't bear to do so. However, Your Highness, why don't you give me your protector beast? He smiled. That's right, actually I don't need Your Highness to reward me. Not long after, this natural mutant will be mine. Your Highness's injuries haven't healed and the marrow-burning blood spirit technique in your body hasn't been removed. You didn't think about finding a place to hide, and instead ran out to ask to die. Are you really tired of living? At the start, his voice was really calm, but the more he spoke, the sharper and colder he became. Zhong Shou's eyes were half closed like he didn't notice anything. Until he had a thought and sensed something. Only then did he open his eyes and a sharp glow appeared. Lu Wushuang was here and he was still so eager. He tore open the world barrier and was about to descend. However, apart from this person, there was another person. He wasn't weak, just a little weaker than Lu Wushuang. Who was he? Since this person was here, then Tianyan Manor didn't need to exist anymore. Thus, he held his sword in his hand and laughed coldly. You said so much just because you aren't willing? Lu Tianyan's breathing stopped once more and he felt really frustrated. In his eyes, the person who asked to die had no chance of leaving this place alive was the person in front of him. It was okay if he didn't compromise and acted like a small fry. However, his words made it seem like the life and death of everyone here was in his hands. His words were arrogant and he looked down on him. He was really asking to die. He was about to die, but he still wanted to force him to hand over his protector beast. That's all there is to being deranged. Shaking his head, Lu Yentian felt like he had nothing to say as he looked down the mountain. Apart from this natural beast, there is one more thing. I would like to ask Your Highness that although my general offended you, he shouldn't have been killed like that. Normal people say that when you hit a dog, you have to look at the owner. How can a bastard like you touch the dog that I raised? This Zhong Shou's strength was indeed not bad and was really surprising. However, no matter how strong he was and how talented he was still a bastard. What was a 7-tailed skyfox? Such a person could actually be listed in the top 20 of the direct bloodline's famous stratagems. Your Highness needs to know that Songyan Hall Headfongjue is just a dog of our Lu family. Your Highness relies on him and thinks that you can do whatever you want. Don't you find that amusing?" Before he finished, the sky shook once more. The blue fire Xian turtle cried out and smashed its head into the outside of the Tianyan Manor. Not only did the restrictions collapse, but even half of the palace walls and houses on the mountain collapsed. Zhong Shou, who was on the back of the turtle, didn't have any intention of talking nonsense with Lu Yentian. Since he wasn't willing to fall to the beast path to pay for his mouth, then his soul would be destroyed here and he wouldn't be able to reincarnate. The green flames burned once more in his soul ocean. This time, what exploded out from the sword was Lu Shichen's vital energy and essence energy. The sword light was cold and sharp. Just the sword path soul intent split the fire cloud in the sky into two, revealing the blue sky. Where the sword was pointed at was Lu Yentian. It caused the latter's expression to change as he retreated. Patches of green light covered the sky. It was a crescent blade shining with a green light, messing up everything in the void. It caused heaven and earth to turn upside down and heaven and earth to be in chaos. The red sword shadow was condensed into a line. Its aura didn't decrease at all as it chased after the true shadow. It broke through the chaotic void heaven and earth. Everywhere it passed, everything returned to normal. Just as the sword shadow was 100 feet away from Lu Yentian, the few celestial realm cultivators around him finally came to their senses. Preposterous! They were either sword artifacts or blade shields. Some directly struck at Zhong Shou while some tried to block the sword attack. Zhong Shou scoffed coldly. Where did this trash come from? He actually dared to jump out. The sword light changed and instantly split into dozens. It slashed forwards and instantly blood rained down. Chapter 882. Amidst the clear sword ring, the sword light was extremely sharp. After it split, it flashed and several celestial realm experts were beheaded one by one. Amidst the thousands of sword shadows, numerous pieces of flesh and blood splattered out. No one could block it. Anyone who dared to take it head-on instantly died, turning into blood and dust. Lu Yentian was barely able to struggle out from the sword attack after being blocked by a few of his subordinates. He only felt that his body was covered in cold sweat. This sword was sudden and there were no signs at all. It seemed to involve time and space laws. If it was a moment slower, it could have sliced his body. He didn't understand. He was obviously badly injured, so how could he have such sword strength? Lu Shichen dying in his hands was already shocking. Lu Yentian nearly followed in his footsteps. He then looked towards Zhong Shou, the sword that was absorbing vital energy and essence energy. He was deep in thought. However, before he understood, the split sword light gathered once more. It killed all the people who tried to stop him. After forcing them away, it formed into a line and pierced through. Time accelerate. Space stack. Cause and effect invert. Fate lock on. Sword intent rose into the air. An unprecedented aura spread across the mountain peak. It was like it gathered all the killing intent and vengeful energy into that sword. It twisted space and time, exceeding the speed of physical laws. In just a 3,000th of a second, it was in front of Lu Yentian's eyes. Compared to the sword before, it was faster, stronger, sharper, and more overbearing. It made it hard for one to react. Lu Yentian had a feeling that the cause and effect and fate power had locked onto him. The moment this sword was slashed out, it was destined to kill him on the spot. Holding his breath, Lu Yentian let out an explosive roar, like the cry of a wild beast before death. A pair of water-splitting golden thorns appeared in his hands as he stabbed forwards. Instantly there were thousands of thorns. In the end, they gathered at one point where Zhong Shou's sword came from. Chaos. Time was broken into chaos. Space was broken into chaos. All cause and effect and fate returned to chaos. However, when the sword and thorns clashed, A shocking ring reverberated throughout the peak. Lu Yentian's eyes were filled with shock once more. Apart from cause and effect, the martial path true technique in the sword also had cause and effect. It also had a bit of controlling true intent. Controlling Tao. Controlling the 3,000 Daos, 10,000 laws. How did this happen? If he didn't confirm that Lin Wushuang wasn't his cousin. He almost thought that the person in front of him was Lu Wushuang in disguise to kill him. Not only was the power of the laws in the sword not disrupted by him, but its own power was also being controlled by him, and it was being countered. No. This true intent of defense was just a facade. At this moment, he vaguely felt that the person in front of him was Tao itself. The feeling of surprise instantly turned into shock. Lu Yentian subconsciously raised his head, only to be met with an emotionless and cold gaze filled with killing intent. Ding! The thorny shadow shattered, and the force of the collision between the two of them was also released. In the palace-like Tianyan manner, countless palaces crumbled, and countless palace walls collapsed. The weaker cultivators in the mansion were all crushed into pieces by this powerful force. Lu Yentian was first shocked and then furious. He was peak celestial realm, the master of a world, and had millions of troops. Was he unable to block one sword from this person? The thorn's sword shadow flashed once more and gathered 30 feet in front of him. Like a storm, it struck the tip of the sword. If one strike wasn't enough, then he would strike 10, 100 strikes. Just at this moment, a vast flame power charged over right at Zhong Shou. Lu Yentian could sense it with his spiritual sense. The 30,000-foot shark snake had charged out from the lake. It pierced through the fire cloud and bit down. This natural variant was naturally good at controlling fire. The flames around its body were something that even it couldn't handle. This was why it needed to stay in the lake to prevent it from burning itself to death. The blue fire Xian turtle waved its giant shield and smacked towards the shark snake. The latter's giant tail smacked onto the shield. This strike was on the same level. The shark snake was forced back 1,000 feet and the blue fire Xian turtle was forced back. However, there was a tinge of fear in the latter's eyes. When the crimson flames swept past it, its green flames were completely dispersed. It needed to rely on the Xuanwu body protecting energy to barely block it. The shark snake seemed to be anxious to save its master and didn't bother about the blue fire Xian turtle. After the golden flame, it spat out a red flame. This breath came from the pill ocean, from the gas field. However, it was 100 times stronger than the red flame on its body. It could melt metal and burn everything. Zhong Shou found it hard to maintain his sword attack. However, he didn't show much dejection. Instead, his lips curled up. The true qi and spiritual energy that he was using now came from the nameless sword and the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique. He absorbed it from the celestial realm cultivators who died under his sword. He had used up half of it in the battle with Lu Yentian. However, before he slashed out, how could he not know that this shark snake wouldn't sit still and watch its master die? Although it was a natural variant, if Lu Yentian died, this shark snake wouldn't be able to live for long. The sword light retracted like it wanted to temporarily retreat. However, when the power was retracted to the extreme, it exploded out once more, suddenly turning around in midair. The 50,000 feet lightning wings flapped and a portion of the lightning blaze thousand flash covered the sword body. It slashed out from an unbelievable angle. It was still. Time accelerate. Space stack. Cause and effect invert. Fate lock on. However, this sword was the Tao. It was filled with Tao attainments. When the sword's shadow slashed out, it was like heaven and earth itself was slashing down on this sword. Lu Yentian's pupils constricted and he suddenly understood. From start to finish, Zhong Shou's target wasn't him. It was his shark snake. The sword light flashed and pierced into the red flame. It didn't bother about the flame power, directly passing through and striking the head of the shark snake. The shark snake was terrified and tried to move its body. However, it realized that it couldn't dodge at all. The blue fire Xian turtle closed in from behind. It waved the two giant black shields over, bringing with it a huge amount of strength. Before this, it was still holding back. At this moment, it went all out. Space twisted, causing the blood sword shadow to be able to use extreme speed to pierce right in front of it. The cause and effect and fate power on the sword body made it unable to struggle. After hesitating slightly, the shark snake continued to retreat. However, it could only avoid being hit on the head. Zhong Shou's blood sword light slashed across its waist. Where the sword shadow passed, it was like it was hitting leather. With a soft poo sound, large amounts of blood spurted out. When it landed on the ground, it turned into a red flame that burned fiercely. A small half of its body, about 1,000 feet long, was chopped off and fell to the ground. Instantly, its flesh and blood withered and turned into flames. The shark snake's appearance was twisted and vicious. Before it was able to roar out, the two giant shields behind it smashed down. They were heavy and thick, and at the sides of the shields there were numerous sawteeth. When the two shields smashed down, it was the strength of hundreds of Sumera mountains. It caused the mountain peak to shake with a loud quang. The Jiao snake's body was forcefully sent flying more than 100 meters away. As for the blue fire Xian turtle, it laughed in delight and felt really good. Zhong Shou retracted his sword attack, and a black flame burned around his body. That sword had at least used up a small portion of the shark snake's vital energy and essence energy. However, this beast's fire essence was too strong. It caused his body to be filled with flame true essence. Luckily, he had the sky burning blood, so he could take it. Then, he floated in the air and looked down coldly at Lu Yentian. Just now, he was struck by the red flame and his arm was nearly melted. However, it was healing at a visible rate. Pretty much at the same time as it healed, another sword slashed down. It was like the Milky Way was falling, a shooting star shining brightly. A sliver of fear finally appeared in Lu Yentian's eyes. From the start, he shouldn't have given this Zhong Shou a place to borrow strength. At this moment, he still had the strength of a world and the strength of 1,000,000 troops to borrow. However, at this moment, Lu Yentian felt like he was alone, so helpless. After exchanging blows for a few breaths, he was forced into such a situation. No, he was in a desperate situation. Why wasn't Lu Wushuang here yet? A spiritual light flashed in his mind and Lu Yentian's eyes were filled with comprehension. Lu Jun, you dare to not help? If I die, will you be able to live alone? After hollering, he scoffed. Lu Wushuang, are you trying to borrow my knife to kill me? Very good. I have nothing to say. However, do you know about the heaven-snatching liquid? If you want to know the whereabouts of this item, please save my life. Along with his words, a sigh spread out from the side. A middle-aged scholar formed a seal with his hands and spat out a word. Instantly, 1,000 layers of waves suddenly appeared in the Tianyan manner. Layer after layer of water wrapped around Lu Yentian's body like a jade belt. Water was such a soft thing, but at this moment, it was like a tough shield blocking in front of Lu Yentian. Piece by piece, it was shattered under the sword attack, and then piece by piece gathered back together. Zhong Shouxin was slightly distracted. Heaven-snatching liquid? He seemed to have heard of it before. He searched his memories and obtained something in just a moment. Stealing the luck of heaven and earth. Below the saint realm, even if a strand of hair was left, even if their soul was wiped out, it could revive the dead. He was instantly moved. Although he didn't have anyone he needed to save in his life. If he could obtain such a treasure, it would most probably be useful in the future. Speaking of which, he wasn't in a rush to kill this person. It wasn't bad to let him enjoy the pain of soul searching. He instantly came back to his senses and noticed that the sword attack was being weakened bit by bit under the wrapping of the water light. He couldn't help but scoff coldly. He casually waved his sleeves and a silver light shot out, disappearing swiftly. It flashed, and when it appeared in front of everyone once more, it was pinned onto Lu Jun's brow. At the start, Lu Jun didn't feel anything. Only when his aura dissipated and his soul power collapsed did he come back to his senses. There was a look of disbelief in his eyes. Then, he died in an instant. His body turned into ashes and dissipated. The water light totally collapsed along with this person's death. Zhong Shou's sword shadow was unobstructed as it pierced in. It clashed with the layers of water splitting thorns. Just as the essence energy drawn from the Jiao snake was exhausted, he sliced off the person's left arm with a single sword strike. Just as he was about to continue, a silver spear finally descended into this world. Chapter 883. The spear shadow struck over, instantly covering the heaven and earth as it struck from outside of this world. It was wrapped in the power of the void, and vast killing intent gathered at the tip, causing one's skin to feel pain. Zhong Shou squinted. At this moment, the life force in his body was used up, so he didn't take it head-on. He retreated, his body flashing. He was 10,000 feet out and he floated in the air. Lu Yentian only saw the sword shadow in the sky suddenly retract and disappear. He was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses and laughed out loud. In the end, he still managed to survive until Lu Wushuang attacked. The muscles around his arm twitched and his bones grew. Instantly, he recovered to normal. He smiled. At this moment, his right and left arms, Lu Yentian and Lu Jun, were both dead. 6 to 7 celestial realm cultivators under him also died. However, so what? As long as he had people on his side, as long as he controlled this Songling world, he could recruit such an expert at any time. He didn't care at all, only using a pair of dark and cold eyes to look at Zhong Shou. Especially that blood-colored sword, the true essence absorbed by the sword was obviously used up. Zhong Shou suddenly attacked, from the shark snake cutting off its tail to Lu Jun's death and Lu Yentian's broken arm. Less than 5 breaths had passed. On Tianyan Manor, the people who were still alive were totally silent, such that one could hear a pin drop on the mountain peak. Jingyin only felt her mouth dry up. She had guessed that Zhong Shou's cultivation was really deep and indiscernible. However, he didn't expect that this person's combat strength would be so strong to such an extent. He had directly injured and killed people from the Tianyan Manor, rampaging all the way. If that silver spear had not intervened in time, the Tianyan Manor would not have been able to survive. If he didn't react in time, he probably would have already killed Lu Tianyan. Even Monk Xiaoya's mouth was agape, a weird glow flashed in her eyes. However, moments later, she frowned and a look of worry flashed across her face. The space tore open and a person stepped in from outside the void world. He was around 20 years old and looked really handsome. There was a red mole at the center of his brows and he was looking coldly at this place. After this person, another young cultivator entered the Songling world. His position just happened to be behind Zhong Shou. Whether intentionally or not, he had blocked Zhong Shou's escape route. Lu Wushuang held his silver spear, his gaze never leaving Zhong Shou as he asked Lu Yentian, "Is the matter of the heaven-seizing liquid true? Do you really know where he is?" Lu Yentian chuckled when he heard this. "Of course it's true. Although I am despicable, I know the pros and cons. I won't lie to you about this matter." Lu Wushuang's face was calm, but there was a flash of joy in her eyes. The happiest moment in one's life was when one's enemy was beheaded and one stepped into the divine realm that one had always dreamed of. His lover, whom he thought would be separated by heaven and earth, had a chance to come back to life. He took a deep breath and looked at Zhong Shou's sword. "Your sword is really not bad. However, you have used up all your strength and it is useless in front of me." If this Zhong Shou could still kill people in front of him and gather blood essence power, then he would have lost everything. Lu Wushuang had lived for so many years for nothing. I thought that you would hide in this Zongling world like a rat until I found you. I didn't expect that you would be so stupid. That's right, you are already in despair. Why did you come here to let me send you off? Although he said this, his gaze was as sharp as a knife. He spread out his spiritual sense and observed each and every change in Zhong Shou's aura. He clearly remembered that when he chased him, he forced this Zhong Shou into despair dozens of times. However, this person used instant space techniques to easily escape. Even when they first fought, he caught him off guard and nearly sliced his head into two was still fresh in his memory. Facing such an opponent, even if his limbs were broken and his spine was crushed, he had to be fully focused and couldn't relax. The delicate and pretty young man who came with him was the same, extremely vigilant. He smiled, but his aura was getting stronger and stronger. His spiritual sense wrapped around Zhong Shou's body and locked onto his soul. He couldn't see through the person in front of him. He only felt that he was a bottomless abyss. Every time he thought that he knew how deep he was, he would notice that this person's foundations were far from just that. For example, today, he was able to force Lu Yentian into such a situation. He pretty much smashed Tianyan Manor into pieces, far exceeding his expectations. To know that Lu Wushuang was searching for him in this world and still dared to appear here, he definitely wasn't unprepared. However, no matter what trump cards this person had or what he relied on, he was definitely going to fall here today. There was no doubt about it. Jingyin and Xiaoya's hearts sunk to the bottom of the valley. Originally, when Lu Yentian's arm was broken by Zhong Shou, they already saw hope. However, when the two of them arrived, their auras were above Lu Yentian's. Their strength was indiscernible. Too strong intents suppressed Zhong Shou's sword intent. Zhong Shou laughed silently and waved his sleeves once more. In the Soul Sea void space, the 72 star Dao seeds all appeared outside one after another. Behind them were 37 white Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth Sword. Lu Wushuang's pupils constricted. Lu Wubing smiled and shook his head. If your highness still wants to rely on this technique to escape, then it won't be as you wish. I was fortunate to have seen young master and your highness fight several times and learned a little. Instant Space Dragon Pellet, Dao Seed Star, Taoist Faction's Cycle of Heaven Star Falling Technique. It is really magical. After thinking about it, I finally thought of a way to restrict it. With a wave of his hand, hundreds of streaks of light surged out. They were formation flags that were laid out all around. The moment this formation was laid out, everyone felt that the surrounding space laws were unusually stable. Zhong Shou also sensed it. With a thought, he activated the instant space power. As expected, he felt that teleporting space was much harder than before. It couldn't stop him from teleporting, but as long as it delayed him for a moment, it would be enough for Lu Wushuang to do many things. For example, to find out where he teleported to so that he could chase, or use special techniques to lock down space to intercept him. However, he didn't care at all. He didn't think about escaping today. It was with much difficulty that he was able to flip over. Naturally, he wanted to have a good fight. After being chased for several months, this grievance. Naturally, he had to get it back from Lu Wushuang. He gathered his spiritual sense and charged into the clouds. His aura exploded out and he seemed to be one with the heavens. Within Zhong Shou's dantian, it started to change. Threads of true essence gathered towards his dantian like spring water. Within his soul, a huge wave rose up. The 18 true spiritual talismans all gave out ripples and showed signs of shattering. At the center of it, the outline of a Tao word true talisman appeared. Only the black and white Dharma still didn't move, suppressing his soul ocean. These changes happened in just a breath. Everyone here, even Lu Wushuang, who was the strongest, didn't notice anything. He only sensed that Zhong Shou's aura suddenly became really weird and indiscernible. Lu Yentian didn't know either. he scoffed. Why are you afraid that he will escape? There were two of his saviors here. If he leaves just like that, wouldn't he be a heartless and ungrateful person? His eyes swept across Xiaoye and Jingyin. He wanted to attack Jingyin. However, he was worried about Zhong Shou, who was standing at the side and didn't dare to directly attack her. Thus, he reached out and grabbing Xiaoye to his side. He directly grabbed her neck and laughed sinisterly. Why don't you try to escape? I think the crown prince should just die peacefully. Maybe I will be merciful and let them live. Zhong Shou didn't bother at all, holding the nameless sword in front of him. He flicked his finger and instantly a clear sword hum sounded throughout the mountain peak. It also suppressed all the other noises. This place was dead silent once more. Since the first time we met, Zhong Shou wanted to have a fair battle with you one day to decide life and death. To be chased for 3 months really makes me feel bad. In the sky, dark clouds surged and covered the horizon. It was the day, but this place was suddenly pitch black. One couldn't even see their fingers if they stretched out their hands. Zhong Shou's impassive tone continued. Luckily, the heavens have opened their eyes. The heavens didn't abandon me, plotting step by step to be 1 step ahead of you. 1 step ahead of Lu Wushuang to step into celestial realm. Although there was still a huge gap between them, they were still in the same realm. Only then did Lu Yentian feel that something wasn't right. He frowned and looked around. In the end, his eyes landed on Zhong Shou's body. His brows were tightly furrowed. At this moment, his Dharma also appeared. Zhong Shou's obscure energy meridians suddenly filled up. The energy around his body also started to rise. What did you do? He really didn't understand why Zhong Shou's body would have such a change. There was also the phenomenon of heaven and earth which made him feel lost. Lu Wushuang and that handsome teen both had solemn expressions, their eyes filled with shock. Naturally, I am going through the tribulation, Zhong Shou replied. His tone didn't fluctuate at all, it was unusually calm. Along with these words, his body started to burn without a flame. A red and white flame rose up from his body. Red flame god tribulation? Zhong Shoxin broke out into a laugh. It was this realm again, one of the most perverted tribulations in legend. The red flames also contained the power to go against laws, charging at his body and soul. However, this time, he felt relieved. If he was anywhere else, he would have gone all out to deal with it. However, in this world, it was exactly what he wanted. Whatever he wanted came to him. His luck was so good, along with the heaven-swallowing technique being used. Wave after wave of wish power crazily surged into his body. While resisting the red flame god tribulation, it was also merging into his body bit by bit. As expected, the blood spirit power was being suppressed bit by bit. Marrow-burning blood spirit, it has caused me so much pain these few days. However, I have to thank you for helping me. As his words left his mouth, the pair of black lightning wings on his back suddenly extended to 90,000 feet in length. Lightning Phoenix Legacy, Lu Family Sky Burning Flame. It caused his lightning blaze 1000 flash secret technique to directly raise by several grade. It covered the entire sky, the flames were endless and its aura was majestic. Zhong Shou was like a god standing on the peak of the mountain. The sword intent charged up once more, its strength had increased by several times. It directly broke the spiritual sense suppression of the two of them and also covered the sky. Chapter 884. The aura was vast and many phenomenons appeared. The red and white flames soared into the sky. At this moment, snowflakes began to drift down from the sky. Trying to act mysterious, Lu Wushuang's brow rose up. For some reason, his heart was filled with fear. That martial path intent was obviously able to go up against him. Looking at his true essence, it seemed like he had broken free from the marrow-burning blood spirit technique and was starting to fill up once more. Hesitating slightly, Lu Wushuang stabbed out with his spear. He felt like something bad was about to happen. If he didn't stop it, it would be too late. White flames burned on the spear body. The silver spear danced, causing a pear flower to bloom in front of Zhong Shou's eyes. First, it spread out piece by piece and then turned into many snow-white pear flowers, endless and endless, giving off a sharp aura. He had to win. Behind Zhong Shou, Lu Wubing smiled and floated forwards. He pointed towards Zhong Shou's back. The badly injured shark snake was still entangled with the blue fire Xian turtle in a stalemate. Lu Yentian directly used his spiritual sense to control the pair of water splitters to attack along with the two of them. It messed up everything, causing the five-element spiritual energy around Zhong Shou and the laws of heaven and earth to return to chaos. The three of them worked together and in an instant, they forced Zhong Shou into a corner. Jingyin instinctively covered her lips to suppress the exclamation in her throat. However, in the blink of an eye, dozens of bright and vast sword lights exploded out around Zhong Shou and swept in all directions. Lu Yentian's water splitters were directly reflected back. Lu Wubing's brow furrowed as he retreated swiftly. Golden finger sleeves appeared on his hands as he pointed out to block the overbearing sword light. Only 1,000 feet out did he finally stop his retreat. His eyes were filled with shock. He felt that each of his attacks was equivalent to fighting against an immortal realm cultivator. 36 swords were like 36 celestial realm cultivators. The main sword, in particular, was fixed in the void above Zhong Shou's head. But it made him feel a great threat, and he had no choice but to retreat. Could this be Zhong Shou's trump card? Powerful indeed. This is the 10 ultimate Imperial Dao Annihilation Sword formation. Zhong Shou has been preparing for a long time. Zhong Shou's clear voice resounded through the air. The nameless sword stabbed into the depths of the pear blossoms. In an instant, the 37 streaks of sword energy merged into one. He slashed out in the air and directly sliced the pear blossoms in half. Clang! A metallic sound rang out as the sword and spear collided. The power of over 1,000 Sumeru mountains collided and exploded in this small space. Following the explosion, countless rocks flew everywhere. The entire mountain peak was flattened by this powerful force. Dust flew everywhere, swirling in the air. Lu Wushuang only felt pain at his thumb and index finger. He lost control of his body and was tossed backward by the power before he finally stopped. Only now did he notice that Zhong Shou had the strength to go up against him. Looking out, he saw that within the dust, there was a red and white flame that was really eye-catching. He couldn't see it, but he could feel a pair of eyes filled with cold, killing intent looking over. Lu Wushuang sucked in a cold breath. For the first time, fear rose up in his heart. However, in the next moment, he totally suppressed it. Instead, his fighting spirit rose. Waves of heat flowed through his limbs and veins. His body stabilized and he stabbed out with a spear. It swept through the air like a dragon, bringing with it the sound of wind and thunder as it stabbed down. Lu Yentian once again used a pair of water-splitting thorns to strike behind him. Lu Wushuang's eyes turned red, his voice like thunder, scram. You want a fair fight? Then I will give you a chance. Let's have a fair fight. At this moment, let's decide life and death. His voice was filled with true qi, shaking the wilderness. The people around felt dizzy, but Lu Yentian's face turned ashen white, fresh blood flowed out from his ears. Zhong Shou laughed coldly within the white flames. Why are you asking me to scram? It is better to let someone help. I am afraid that you aren't my match. A sharp sword light sped out from the white flames like a swallow returning to the forest. Its trajectory was really mysterious and indescribably beautiful. It swept through the air. In the eyes of everyone, it was really blurry and they couldn't see it clearly. Like time and space had stopped. One origin sword universe light. It was the sword of time. When he was in the spirit realm, no matter what, he couldn't use it or take the sword intent. At this moment, he was able to use it so easily. Outside of the universe light sword, there was a thread of killing path sword intent hidden within. Kung! Spear and sword clashed and there was a loud ring. At the front of the pear blossom, half of the silver-white spear tip was sliced off and tossed into the air. Lu Yentian and Lu Wubings's eyes widened as they stared at this scene in disbelief. The latter was even slightly absent-minded as he muttered to himself. Sword Intent Spirit Realm, it is actually Sword Intent Spirit Realm, how did this happen? If it was a normal Spirit Realm intent, he wouldn't be so shocked. However, in front of his eyes was the Time Sword Intent. It was one of the sources of the world, the foundations of the 3000 Daos. It also contained the Killing Path True Intent. Initial Spirit Realm, but it didn't feel unfamiliar at all, it was really natural. It seemed like he had been immersed in it for a long time and his attainments were really deep. In other words, this person comprehended this spirit realm sword intent a few years before he went through his tribulation. As expected, he was indiscernible. He grasped such a sword intent, so how was he chased by young Master Wushuang in such a bad state? After being stunned for a moment, Lu Wubing came back to his senses and noticed that Lu Wushuang's current situation wasn't good. After the spearhead was cut off, the spear shadows that filled the sky were also directly scattered. Zhong Shou's sword shadow shone in the air once more. It was still like a white steed flashing across a crack, like a swallow flying back. It was simple but it contained the laws of heaven and earth. The 10 Extreme Imperial Dao Destruction Sword formation was also connected to his mind. There was no gap at all. Time accelerate. Space stack. Cause and effect invert. Fate lock. With a ding, the sharp sword light sliced off a portion of the silver-white spear. Lu Wushuang's main body was unable to escape. The sword light swept across, just brushing his arm and causing a large patch of blood to explode out. At this moment, Lu Wushuang was furious but also felt powerless. That blood sword wasn't that sharp. However, at this moment, it was like it wasn't a weapon of the human world, causing the spear in his hand to break upon contact. He couldn't block it and couldn't dodge it. Lu Yentian's face was filled with shock as he looked forwards. This was the first time since he was born that he was so terrified and didn't know what to do. A few breaths ago, he thought that he could easily take down this Zhong Shou. However, looking at the situation now, it seemed like even Lu Wushuang, one of the top few in the 18th generation of the Lu family, wasn't the opponent of this Zhong Shou. He couldn't be his shield anymore. Many thoughts flashed in his mind. Lu Yentian didn't think much as he raised Dawn Moon in front of him once more. He clenched his fist, causing the woman in his hands to be unable to breathe. Stop right there. If you still want her life. Within the red and white flames, Zhong Shou scoffed coldly. He didn't bother at all as he continued forwards, stepping forwards. The sword light in his hand flashed and disappeared. It swept across the void and returned in an instant. The blood light was really thick and it actually brought back a ball of vital energy and true essence. Lu Tianyan was about to use strength to continue to force him. Following which, he looked at his hand in shock. His entire right arm had been cut off at the base. His muscles were swiftly withering and his bones were turning gray, like he had lost all his life force. Not only that, but even much of the true qi and blood in his body was sucked out. It caused his body to be really weak. This sword was so quick that he couldn't even sense his broken arm. First, he was shocked and then terrified. Lu Yentian wanted to scold out, but he noticed that he didn't even have the strength to speak. He could only spit out a few words that couldn't be heard. You demon. Zhong Shou was too lazy to bother. Demon? He hadn't done anything more evil. Within his energy ocean, a golden pellet was formed. The true essence was like a golden mercury liquid that wrapped around the area. The changes within his soul ocean were even more intense. The 18 true spiritual talismans had already disappeared. There was only an incomplete but majestic Tao word that hung in the middle of his soul ocean. Spiritual light shot out all around and shone on the space within his heart. There was also a humanoid figure formed from countless amounts of soul force standing within. This was his true image. The Tao word true talisman was placed at his brow. His left and right hands each held the black and white holes, controlling the beginning and end. When Zhong Shou waved his sword once more and slashed down from above, the sword body was filled with Tao. Zhong Shou was the Tao. The sword in his hand was the punishment of the heavens. At this moment, he saw that Lu Wushuang had tossed aside the silver spear in his hand. He hurriedly took out a black-red shield in front of his body. The sword light slashed down like it was hitting a piece of rotten bamboo. It sliced a hole in the shield. Blood splattered as Lu Wushuang's left arm was sliced off. In the end, this person was able to avoid his vital parts. Even his nameless sword and the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique weren't able to affect his body. As expected, this person's defensive ability was stronger than his offensive ability, controlling Tao. At this moment, his golden pellet was slowly forming. Pretty much every breath that passed, his strength would increase by a portion. The strength of this sword was 50% stronger than before. However, it was still only able to injure Lu Wushuang and not damage his foundations. Following this, he slashed out several more times. Lu Wushuang was still barely able to hold on and block the sword light. Zhong Shou's pupils constricted and then he calmed down once more. As expected from the most outstanding disciple of the sky-burning Lu family. He really wasn't ordinary and didn't disappoint. Today, it was just sword techniques that couldn't do anything to him. Then, 3,000 star falling. 72 star Tao seeds moved with the sword and slashed out horizontally. Where it passed, heaven and earth collapsed like a world was being formed. That black-red giant shield also shattered, breaking into hundreds of pieces and scattering in all directions. Where the sword and the person were, there were no more obstructions. Where the blood sword light passed, Lu Wushuang's legs below his knees were instantly broken. Zhong Shou exclaimed, retracting his sword attack and returning to the front of his body. He smashed a streak of light that flew over into pieces. Chapter 886. He retracted his sword attack and returned to the front of his body. Zhong Shou casually smashed a streak of light that flew over into pieces. It was Lu Wushuang's broken silver spear, attacking Wei to save Zhao, risking his life. However, Lu Wushuang saved his life at the very end. He knew that he was going through the tribulation and that he couldn't be disturbed. Lu Wushuang panted. His gaze was really complicated. The fighting spirit in his eyes disappeared and was replaced by deep fear and shock. However, at this moment, what Zhong Shou cared more about was the handsome teen behind him. After the initial setback, he didn't attack anymore. He formed a seal and stood 10,000 feet away. Even when Lu Wushuang was in danger and nearly died under his sword, he didn't show any intention to help. At this moment, balls of spiritual energy rippled in the void, spreading out into the outer region and into the void. Zhong Shou turned his head and looked towards that person. Thinking about it, he knew the reason. Is this the Great Void Space Teleportation Curse? In his memory, this was an extremely strong spell. It wasn't referring to power, but the use of this spell. For people like them, traveling through the void of the outer realms was actually like passing through the gaps between bubbles, using these naturally formed shortcuts to roam the various worlds. However, this great void space teleportation curse broke through the barriers of space. Numerous worlds were parallel to each other on the same time layer. As for this great void space teleportation curse, it would directly open up those barriers. If one walked through the outer region void, there might be thousands of worlds between the two worlds. However, if one used a true time travel technique to pierce through the two worlds, then it was just breaking open a layer of space. However, this layer was something that even God Realm and Saint Realm experts couldn't do anything about. In the long river of time, there were simply too many variables. The coordinates of space were often uncertain and tough to lock onto. Only this great void space teleportation curse was an exception. It could cause people from thousands of worlds to descend here. However, the requirements for this technique were often really strict. Preparations had to be made beforehand. Not only did one need to draw spirit tattoos on one's skin and use one's body as a formation, one also needed to coordinate with one's body. If one wasn't a God Realm expert, their physical body wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of teleportation. It's the Great Void Transference spell. Your Highness is truly knowledgeable. Lu Wubbing laughed and waved his sleeves. Dozens of blood-red crystals flew out. In the blink of an eye, a small spiritual array was formed. Your Highness is the only person that I, Lu Wubbing, have never seen in my life. It forcefully separated him from this dimension and brought it forward by 0.003 of an instant. At this moment, even if Zhong Shou had unlimited strength, he couldn't use it. Naturally, the person in front of him couldn't hurt him. He couldn't help but laugh. This person was really an amazing spirit master. Although martial cultivators were powerful, spirit masters had thousands of tricks up their sleeve. If the latter was given a certain amount of time and space, it wasn't surprising for them to win against the strong. However, this time technique was what Zhong Shou was good at. If he had no choice, then he wouldn't hesitate to use the Book of Eon Extreme Life. Although the Great Void Space Teleportation Curse is not bad, it has huge weaknesses and is easily broken. This is why my formation can block the instant space technique and also prevent any unexpected dangers. However, I know that Your Highness is good at the instant space technique, and this technique can only stop you for a moment. However, I still have this item in my hands, Lu Wubbing said expressionlessly, and a silver mirror suddenly rose up behind him. It looked really normal, but when the mirror light shone over, it caused the area within 100,000 miles to be in chaos. Pieces of space were ripped apart and many heaven and earth laws were broken. Zhong Shou frowned once more. Although the mirror light couldn't touch him, it didn't touch him. Although the mirror couldn't touch him, it made his return more than 10 times harder. He felt that the person in front of him was even harder to deal with than Lu Wushuang. Following this, Lu Wubbing looked coldly at Lu Yentian. Mannerhead, are you still not willing to risk your life at such a time? If I lose and the Great Void Space Teleportation Curse can't be completed, you won't have a future. Even if your soul isn't corroded, if we die today, we won't even be able to live. What is the point? Lu Yentian scoffed and knew what Lu Wubbing was referring to. He was the lord of a world, and if he could borrow the power of this world and use King Path martial arts, he would have God Realm first-level combat strength. However, he had many worries and wasn't willing to be affected by cause and effect, not willing to damage his soul and not willing to be restricted by the King Path energy. He still wanted to improve on his cultivation. This was why, although he had 1 million troops and no less than 3 billion people, he could borrow less than 1/10 of that power. Thinking about it, Lu Yentian once again used the twin water-splitting needles to strike down from the air. He still wasn't willing to use the King Path secret technique and end his own future. However, he swallowed a red pill and his energy meridians and spiritual sense instantly increased and swelled by close to 4 times. The twin water-splitting needles buzzed and didn't try to attack Zhong Shou's main body. Merciful Buddha, witnessing the unlimited beginning and end, the future ruler of the peaceful world. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.